All right, we're live.
It's time.
Before you start, please speak into your microphones. Drag them over there.
What do I have for time?
And we got to share this, Mark.
Yes, we do. Get you. Okay. I get one and you get that one.
Get one? Is it live?
It's live.
At least I don't have to breathe in your ear now.
Okay. It's 1 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. And we will have our pledges first. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag.
Oh, that's yours.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Okay. Can we have the roll call, please?
Chairperson Sharba,
Here.
Commissioner Jack Bose,
Here.
Commissioner John, Commissioner Tom.
Yes.
Commissioner Davenport,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Antonio, alternate Commissioner Bledsoe.
Okay. We will next have public comments. I haven't received any requests to speak. Is that correct? Thank you. Okay, Ray Dantilli, step up, please.
I'll be brief. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Appreciate the meeting. It's been a while. More than anything, I appreciate your service to the community, and I think that this is a new era for the P&Z committee. In my conversations with Chairperson, it's clear this commission recognizes its independence. It's an independent advisory group for the city, and I think that is such an important function. As I have gone around the county and seen other P&Z commissions and councils operating, that interplay between P&Z and council is such an important dialogue to the benefit of the city and all its citizens. So there's 3 A's that I think of. I hope that y'all will be accessible, that you will be accountable to everyone in the community, and reach out to us, and take comment from us, and be open to us. And just remember that it is that independent advice that we're looking for, because the council, they have the final vote. You guys get the freedom of saying what you feel is true, and they're the ones who have to live by the decision. So I so appreciate the intelligence and the acumen that you have volunteered to serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray Dan. And okay, I'd like to make a few comments. I think this is a good time to do that to the citizenry and also to the members of the commission. This is kind of a unusual and kind of a real neat day. We've got all kinds of new members joining the commission, which is just great.
And I am going to ask everyone to introduce themselves a little bit so we get to see and know who we're talking with about some usually important items on our agenda for the city of Woodcreek. I want to make one point about what we're supposed to be doing. And in a way, I think I'm seconding what Ray Dan was already suggesting very nicely. And that is, in our charge from the city of Woodcreek, we are here to advise and consent. And that's kind of an interesting choice of words because we see that in many different kinds of documents at all levels of government. Perhaps the most important one, and if not the most recent one, is a statement made by then Associate Justice Stephen Breyer, who I'm sure everybody knows is retiring from the Supreme Court of the United States. And I was driving to school one day, well, the day, in fact, when he was announcing his retirement with President Biden. And what Justice Breyer mentioned was that, advising consent is very important, but he wanted to emphasize how important the advise part of that is. Consent is either yea or nay, up or down. It's pretty quick decision-making in some ways. Advising the city is a little bit different. Advising involves maybe more than technical issues. Advising should include common sense. Advising should especially include what's good for the whole city. And so as we debate and discuss different issues here, I think we all want to keep in mind that we're talking about specific items and items that affect everybody in Woodcreek, not only now, but in the future. We have to keep that in mind. P&Z is very future oriented because whatever we do is going to last until it, of course, changes sometime. And so I'm real excited about that possibility. We've got a bunch of activities coming up that we're supporting from P&Z that city is scheduling in terms of meetings with citizenry and stuff like that. But I just want to make it known that I'm really thrilled to have some new members and some very good people. And I'm just really glad and grateful that City Council, up till this past week, in fact, was able to get some very good folks to join us. And that's always necessary. And so I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about maybe where they live and what they do.
Sure. I'm Thomas Parling, and my accent is from Sweden. I'm born and raised in Sweden. Came over to Houston in the early 80s and spent 25, 30 years in Houston before we moved to Wimberley about 6, 7 years ago. And 2 years ago, we moved from Wimberley to Woodcreek. So I live on Augusta Lane. I'm on the 15th hole of a golf course if you are golfers. In Houston, I ran a manufacturing company for the entire time. And since moving west here to Wimberley and Woodcreek, I've been sort of playing around with real estate a little bit, I guess, as a retirement activity. And then at one point in time, I had about 8 short-term vacation rental properties around Wimberley. So even when those discussions come up here, I do have some, I guess, experience in that area should I come up here. But, I'm not here to try to push any of my own ideas or agendas. And as you were saying, I think we're here to think of what's best for the entire city, whatever the topics may be. And that's going to be my approach as well. And if it's a big issues, I don't think our committee nor city council should make those decisions unless and until the people of Woodcreek have been polled one way or the other as to what they think about the major issues. So that's my.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, no, almost asleep. No, I'm just joking. I'm Jack Bose. I live at 20 Country Lane. Of course, you can look at me and obviously see that I've been retired for quite a while. We bought a vacation home here in 2009, escaped all the hurricanes down there on Galveston Bay. And then after coming up here month after month for about 4 years, we decided, it's a hell of a nice place. Why don't we just sell our house and move up here? And we did, and then we eventually, built that place on Country Lane. I'm retired NASA. I was in the military and I was in private industry. And I play a little golf now and walk. I got a little mini Australian Shepherd, and she drags me around the golf course in the morning, thank goodness. I mean, we both enjoy it. So, and I look forward to that every day. And I look forward to being on this committee. I know that there's been some disagreements here and there, but by and large, I think it's a good opportunity for people to, to contribute to, if they have time, contribute to the community in the city.
Hello, my name is Louis Davenport. I go by Andy. My wife is Meredith, and we've got 3 kids, 16, 15, and 10 and a half. So we're right in the thick of things with schedules and family and stuff right now. We live over on Champion Circle, just at the intersection of the main drag and Champion Circle. I am in the military part-time. I'm an F-16 instructor pilot down in San Antonio, and then I'm the director of operations for the Texas Air National Guard up at headquarters at Camp Mabry. And then in my civilian life, I'm a physician. I do mostly aerospace medicine, taking care of pilots, doing medical exams for pilots. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited with the new city council. I've always been interested in local government and sharing input. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. I'm Joe Katarba, and I'm Chair of Planning and Zoning. I think this is my 3rd year doing this, 2nd, 3rd year. But I'm planning and zoning for several years now, and I found it to be a great experience. We get to hear about and talk about all the activity taking place in city council and in the community, and that's just great. I teach over at Texas State University for my day job over in sociology, and thank God for internet instruction. I can be here this time of day for a meeting. And but I look forward to a good year. We've got some new members here, and we've got a lot of important items to deal with in this agenda, and I know in future agendas. And so we're just going to go ahead with that. And I appreciate everybody being here. So nice to have people to talk with at these meetings.
Let me add some. I took 3 steroids this morning because I got a bulge in my neck, and the physician said, well, it's going to make you goofy. And some of y'all are going to say, Jesus is going to make him goofier. So if I'm slurring my words and slouching a little bit, it's because I'm high on these 3 steroids. There we go. All right.
Okay, and we move into our consent agenda, which involves the approval of the P&Z Commission minutes from November 9th, 2021, which was our last meeting. Before we move to approve the meetings, I'd like to suggest a change, an amendment to the minutes as such. And it involves a motion that was passed, an item involving approval of the discussion we had on I believe it was on the overlay proposal. And it's not quite what we intended the way it came up in print, and it's no one's fault but our own. But there were 2 points to the amendment, one of which was that we were approving, the intent was to improve the process of reviewing and eventually approving or voting on the proposal for the overlay. And because we have so many more things that the process has to include, town hall meetings, and more discussion with citizenry, and feeding input back to the city council. So we voted our intent was to vote for the continuation of the process. We didn't want to stop the process at all. The second part of that should be perhaps a separate voting item, and that was our intent to, what was that exactly?
To get a legal opinion.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, to seek legal opinions about some issues that were of interest and of concern to members of P&Z. And we approved that too. And my understanding is we should probably now separate those 2 items into 2 separate motions. City manager?
Well, you do have it because in the minutes, it does reflect that it was an amendment to the motion. So you should be okay.
So are you saying it's okay as written?
I think, yeah, Because in the motion, it actually states that, motion was made by Commissioner Bowes to approve the rezoning classification. And then, that was one that you were trying to clarify, but then the amendment actually, was to, ask for legal opinion on it. And so it was an amendment, then it went back to the original vote.
So it's okay as is.
With the amendment, yes.
Okay,
I agree.
leave it
Well,
as such.
so you're changing the name.
Right.
Okay? All right. We have to be more careful on how we communicate with everyone at the meetings. I take responsibility for that. Okay, the next item is administering the oath of office to new members. And who does this?
You can go both together. No. It's gonna do. She's the city secretary today.
Okay.
Ready?
Stand here.
Sure. Stand up.
They stand?
Nothing like taking another oath, Andy.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of planning and zoning commissioner of the city of Woodcreek, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Texas and of the city of Woodcreek. So help me God. Here's my-
Okay, next item on our regular agenda is the election of a vice chairperson.
And I'll make a motion that we appoint Lydia Johns as vice chair. Oh, we haven't finished.
Finish up.
Yeah, yeah, the story, huh?
Okay. Wait. Secret officer.
Is there a second to the motion?
I got it. I'm getting it. The motion was to appoint Lydia Johns as the vice chair for this commission.
Second right here.
Okay, any discussion on this? Lydia couldn't join us today because of illness, so
Like her now.
we'll,
Well, let me just say about, she's experienced here. Also, she's an officer in the HOA over there at the establishment. What is that complex over there?
Cypress Point.
Yeah, Cypress Point. Is she the vice chair over there? I mean, she's got a lot of
Yeah,
experience.
she was the treasurer. She's
Yeah.
served in several capacities.
So she's got a lot of experience. I think she'll be I think she'll bring good credentials to us.
in her absence, we'll trust that will remain for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you so much. Okay, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Bowes,
Yes.
Commissioner Palm,
Yes.
Commissioner Davenport,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes. Unanimous vote. Thank you. The next item is review and discussion on Open Meetings Act, Public Informations Act, ordinances versus resolutions, and social media. And Jack, I think you'd like to comment with that?
Yeah, I just, since we've got two newbies here, and I was hoping that the third one would be here, but I've asked Bud to look at this. There's confusion among the city of what an ordinance is. Can you just say the hell with it? Do what you want? Or is it a law? And I'm gonna read this to Bud. An ordinance is a law or decree by a municipality. Put differently, an ordinance is a local city law. The ordinance carries the state authority and has the same effect as a state statute. Is that true?
Within the city, yes.
Within the city. Next question to you. Should a P&Z member set aside his or her personal opinion and public opinion to support a city law/ordinance?
Every member of the council and any commission should take seriously their oath of office where they swore to uphold the laws of the U.S., the Constitution, the laws of this state, the Texas Constitution, and the laws of this city. And if in fact their personal preferences or opinions conflict with the laws that I've just set forth, they should set those aside and follow the law.
Okay, thank you. I want to give just a brief summary of where we started last summer, because all this kind of folds in to similar action items today. And in January last year, the city sponsored, and I'm just going to kind of read this, the city sponsored a social media law for government officials class. And that was taught by Alan Boquist, who is both a municipal attorney and a distinguished lecturer on the behavior of city officials. All P&Z members attended, some council members attended, and some comprehensive plan members attended. What Alan did was to outline the do's and the don'ts. And what it boiled down to, he said, avoid discussion on social media, any related city issue or opinion. Discussing the status of issues is fine as long as you refrain from personal spins. I've been on this thing 5 years, and I've seen a lot of commissioners come and go. And not one P&Z member, not one has ever gone on social media and discussed an issue before this board. Not one commissioner has ever gone on social media and discussed the behavior of another commissioner. And not one P&Z commissioner has ever gone on social media and complained about an action that was determined here in this board. They just avoided it. Well, I fell in the trap last summer. I did exactly what he said don't do. It hemmed around, and we'll talk about that later, the Grove and the Oaks community, 15, 16 homes off of Brook, Meadow. And there was a lot of commotion on the social media, and I tried to avoid it. But unfortunately, one night after a few cocktails, about 10 o'clock, I just happened to pull it up in my study, and I saw something on Next Door Neighbor by a citizen making complaints about our behavior. And quite frankly, it infuriated me. Instead of saying, Jack, turn the damn lights out and go to bed and hug your wife, I decided, well, let me answer it. Well, I did. At 4 o'clock in the morning, my subconscious, I just rose up in the bed. I must have been dreaming by it. And Jack, you dumb, what you put in there is going to be misinterpreted. You've even you've thrown fuel on the fire. So at 4:30 in the morning, I went down to my study and pulled up Next Door Neighbor because, as you know, you can delete an item. But the guy that I responded to is pretty clever. I think he must hug his laptop because in the wee hours in the morning, he'd gotten up there and transposed my saying to another part of the Next Door Neighbor and even threw it over into another website. So I was cooked, absolutely cooked. So at that, 4:35, I then responded and trying to get myself out of that trap. I didn't say anything wrong. It's just the way it could be interpreted. And I did exactly what Alan said don't do. You can trap yourself. And what he was saying is you trap yourself, and 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, and there's a lawsuit, you're in a world of hurt because you can't remember why in the hell you said that in the first place. So he gave us really, 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 really good advice. Okay, I'm going to continue. Last summer, a developer approached us with a planned development district proposal for 16 homes. That was area off of Brook Meadow Drive. And he followed the pattern that this city's done before. A planned development district is a common thing that cities use, developers use. It gives a good bit of latitude to the developer, and it's more bang for the bucks for both for the developer and the city. We did one over, for my time, over there in Tully Court across 12, and those homes over there. That was done by a planned developer. That was done the same way. We also did one on what's the name of it? Fair, well, those quadplexes on Deerfield, there. We did that a year or two ago, and that was also the same thing. In both cases, the impervious cover of 30% was exceeded. In one case, it was 30%. It was around 35%. The one over in Tully, in a couple areas, went all the way up to 50% in a couple of lots. So the developer, he came in and recommended his development, which exceeded the 30%, somewhere around 30 to 35% for lots, and approached us. And we voted 4-1. And I'll tell you why I voted. I got hammered for it, but it doesn't bother me a damn bit. In part of the 2030 plan, there's a statement in there, and I'll read it to you. And that was, at that time, it was, the update was 2019, so it's a couple years old, last summer. And here's what one of the goals stated in it. Attract developers to construct senior appropriate housing, such as patio homes, independent living, and assisted living. The next one is improve and expand housing stock by encouraging new types of housing in appropriate locations by 2030. So I fell on that. I thought, well, you know, those 5 acres seemed to me, it fell right into that. I didn't even think about where it was in the state plan, estates and all that kind of stuff, or Brook Meadow as a district. That didn't even enter my mind. I know it was just off Brook Meadow. And the other item was, this city lives paycheck to paycheck. An example last week, it had to go in reserves to pay for a legal bill. You know, we don't have any money, and we got huge, huge bills ahead of us. $5 or $6 million in roads. We ought to have a town hall that we can have meetings like this. We put together a 40-page CMAQ report last year as a result of the storm, and that's $40,000 or $50,000 in there that city approved, city council approved. We don't have money for that. And then we just recently approved 4 hours a week for a policeman. They're 168 hours in a week. 4 hours is kind of piddly. But anyway, all I'm getting at to you is, I looked at it from a standpoint of 16 homes and a $400,000 to $600,000. That'd bring in a nice chunk of property tax. And I can afford the property tax. But there are a lot of people who can't. A lot of people struggling. Young people and older people with fixed income. So that's the 2 reasons that I did. Anyway, it voted 4-1. The other individual who I have a lot of respect for, and I want you to remember this. He was totally against any development in this city. He was against the duplexes on
Jack,
Brook Meadow.
I think we're straying away from.
Well, I'm trying to get to something.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to get something. I'm not trying to criticize anybody.
No, I get that. I
know, but I'm trying to set the stage on how we got to this overlay.
Okay.
Okay? And so he was totally against it, and he voted He doesn't want any part of it. This is the interesting part. And then it went to the city council. City council, hey, whoa, it's over 30%, and we want more information. That's fine. That's their job. A month or so later, it came back again with 1 or 2 houses less at 30%. And still, at this time, the social media was burning itself up, 7 days, 24 hours, and it was dividing the city. And we were aware of that. And the day that he presented his preliminary plan, 5 P&Z people, before they went in there, I was out of town on a medical issue. I was out of town. But it boiled down to follow the law, ethics, and all that. And all 5 of them went into executive session with Bud. And when they came out, all 5 voted for that preliminary plan. And remember, one individual didn't want anything about it, didn't want a damn thing to do with it. But he came out of there voting for it. I called him. I said, I know you can't talk about it, but that's courage. That is really courage. He pushed aside public opinion. He pushed aside his personal opinion and voted. And the culprit in this is, and this might hurt Bud's feelings, the culprit is going into closed session, executive session. I despise them, folks. I absolutely despise them. And the reason I say that is, had the citizens seen the interaction between commissioners and Bud, I am convinced the citizens would say, "Why, golly, those P&Z commissioners got put in a box." And I understand how they came out and voted. I just hope we never, ever have to go into executive, because see, there's no fingerprints. You go into executive session, there's no minutes, no nothing. It's she said, and there's no fingerprints. It's a great way to solve a problem because you don't have to explain it to anybody outside. I think that's wrong. Now, obviously you got to do closed sessions for hiring, firing, and certainly discussing the raises with P&Z commissioners. I mean, we don't want that going in public. But that's all I want to say.
I'm sorry.
I'm finished.
Okay. Comment on this is that going into session is allowed, and under different circumstances, you just can't eliminate them.
Oh, I know that.
It can be of really good value.
Quick-
Are there other comments? I'm going to ask.
But he- I'm
Bud,
sure he
Bud,
wants
you go
to-
ahead.
Quick recap on it, and yes, Alan Borquez is one of the finest municipal lawyers in the state of Texas, a guy that I've worked with for over a decade now. He put on a phenomenal presentation about the Open Meetings Act and how that impacts members of the city, officers, elected, non-elected, and members of commissions. Jack, I presume by now that you have pulled the hook out of your cheek that snags you. But always balance 2 things. When you post on social media as an elected official, whether or not you intend to, create a record. Balance that with, at the same time, your protected rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution to speak and speak freely. I think as it states in the Declaration of Independence, prudence will indeed dictate, and prudence is in the eye of the beholder, which is each of you understand that you have the right to speak, but exercise that prudence. And I think that's the point that you're trying to make, Jack.
Okay, are there any other comments on this topic? Okay, I don't think we're going to call for any action on this, unless you will.
There is no action. No, this is
Okay.
just a discussion.
Good. Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay, our next topic is number Number 4, review and discussion of the, number 5, discussion of future meeting times in the Planning and Zoning Commission. City Manager?
Yes, Chairperson. Since we are using the CAM, that we have to work around their schedule, but what we would like to hear from the commissioners is when is the best time to meet? And then we will adapt that to meet the CYJ schedule.
Okay, I'll answer first by saying that I recall when we used to hold meetings not that long ago at City Hall, we used to have them at 5 in the afternoon. And that seemed to be a good time for people, both who are busy during the day and busy in the evening, families or work or otherwise. And I think that'd be a good time to return to. Any other opinions?
I agree completely. Yeah, outside of normal work hours or on weekends, but 5 o'clock could totally work.
Okay.
I'm flexible time-wise. I certainly don't think we need to have weekend meetings, but what I want to have is predictable schedules, okay? And I don't know if the city wants to have it the day before city council meeting every 2 weeks or once a month. But I mean, we all have plans, and I couldn't go to the previous one, which was canceled anyhow, because it was short notice. So I would like to have a consistent plan subject to some exceptional circumstances. So if we have it once a month, it should be that first day of that week of a month or something like that, consistent, if possible.
Okay, and again, for information purposes, we had a series of special meetings for city council and for us, and so we've been kind of catching up with ideas without having the opportunity to just do it on a monthly basis, which I would agree with too. I think, at least for predictable reasons.
Well, the biggest problem is availability of this facility. I mean, when they start getting occupied here, it could be in late spring. We're in a world of hurt trying to find a place to meet.
What we will do is sit down with CYJ staff and try to get a schedule so we know what days it's available at that time. And that way, then we can send it out to all the commissioners on that, at least to know what day would be available.
But it brings up another issue with all these other outstanding committees we got. We got 4 or 5 that 6 maybe have to meet open sessions. On this facility, this guy Danny lives in Austin. And, this is a free facility. I don't, can we pack a couple of meetings in one day?
Are all the other meetings on Wednesdays, do we know?
Actually, we have no other meetings scheduled because we only have one person that has volunteered for any of those new committees.
Okay.
So we have no idea what days they would like to meet.
But that's assuming that they'll eventually get filled.
They will. And we will try to, next week, we have a comprehensive planning committee advisory group is meeting right before the city council. So that we have 2 in the day. And we're trying to make sure that Danny or the facility only has to be set up one time within a 3-day period, just so it fits in everything. But we'll just work with him on the dates that will be available.
What about the city hall? Have y'all taken that separation out there?
With the uptick in actually with what's happened with the COVID again, we are still waiting on our IT to get the microphones hooked back up, convert over, because our original design was just to record but not to broadcast.
Okay.
And so we have not done anything in there until we can get our recording system up and going again.
How long was that take?
So we're trying to get IT there.
Okay, but what I'm suggesting is that if you move that petition, that would allow enough separation, wouldn't it, for us?
No, not when you add in the audience.
Well, wait a minute. The audience could sit at home and watch it on Zoom.
You have to provide for them to be able to be
Well,
at the meeting.
put a tent in the parking lot. I'm just
No, but we have.
It's those pills taking effect.
And because when you think about each one of this commission plus versus our city council, the elected bodies sits 6 members. If we have the alternates here, this body seats 7.
It's 8 or 9.
And then when you have staff, you add another 3 to 4 people, so you're already at 11. And we're watching it very diligently to make sure when we can move back into that facility. And it will be ready when we can.
One point that you made, which was, I think, very important, is that if possible, we can schedule our P and Z at least a week before council, because we're starting to collect a lot of materials to review, and I know it's not always possible, but it's kind of a good objective. Yes, sir.
Is this the only venue available for us?
Yes.
I'm thinking like that big old church, Baptist church, have lots of meeting areas and things like that. I don't know.
Can we
The question is, and it's always been that we have been, there's two different venues that are vehicles that people talk about. Number one is that each body is supposed to meet within its jurisdiction. Now, the definition of jurisdiction is, where is that? Is that the ETJ or is that just city limits? And
I've given the opinion, I think that it would be possible to do that. I mean, and practically speaking, asking someone to drive across 12 to get to the ETJ is not an excessively burdensome thing. I mean, you consider, by way of example, yeah, how the size of the city of Austin and asking someone to drive to City Hall. So I don't see any statutory prohibition to it.
yeah, and we also have access to the VFW. However, that is not they do charge, which is okay. But
Are they a recording facility?
no, they do not have recording facilities. Baptist Church does.
Okay, because we just definitely need to have recording facilities.
And I don't know if they have the same type of recording facilities we have here, because all this equipment is owned by the city, except for the mixer. And so we at City Hall and here, we both have the recording facilities.
Okay, so I think we've aired our request pretty well.
Okay.
Anyone? Thank you. Okay, next item, number 6, workshop, City of Woodcreek Comprehensive Plan. And at one of our previous meetings, I think it was our last meeting, we raised a request to city that we have someone come who can talk about technical kind of issues related to zoning and planning and things like that, kind of defining terms for us and stuff. And so we've been fortunate to have Mr. Brandon Land with us, and I believe our vice mayor is going to introduce this and take charge. Go ahead.
Microphone.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to move the chairs to sit for the workshop. And there's 3 of us who participating today. I'm currently the mayor of the town for the city council, City of Woodcreek. And also with me is Councilmember Hines. And Councilmember Hines, for those of you who are new to government, in the past, we would have assigned council members responsibilities. In the past, we would assign council members responsibilities, and as a rule, we would have 2 council members for continuity. And in this case, Mayor Vasco is using this process very effectively. So Ms. Hines is working with me on council representative on the continuing implementation of the comprehensive plan. And we have a newcomer, and this is, I'm going to have I have Brenton, Brandon, and then we have a council member named Brent. So but this is Brandon. And Brandon is with K. Freeze. K. Freeze is our engineering consulting firm. He's a planner. I will let him introduce himself, and he can tell you about his qualifications. K. Freeze has done work for us in the area of our streets and engineering, but they go beyond that. They also supported us in the survey for the comprehensive plan, and we've asked them to continue. Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, city council members and staff. Thank y'all very much for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to be here. Really excited to assist with y'all's comprehensive planning process. I'm a city planner. I'm also a trained architect. Went to school for architecture, got a master's in architecture, and thanks to the recession, back in '08, it pushed me towards city planning, and it was the way it was supposed to be. You know, I was meant to be a city planner all along. So I started out in Midland as a city planner there, just working on plats and zone changes and simple planning things. Made my way to Oklahoma City. I was their downtown city planner for about 3 years. Wanted to get back to Texas, and so I settled in San Marcos, right down the street. I was a senior planner there, worked on some big developments, and worked on their new UDC and some comprehensive plan updates. And eventually kind of gravitated back towards San Antonio, and where I served as planning and zoning director for the city of Bull Verde. And most recently, I was planning and zoning director for the city of Leon Valley. My passion is, I love working with the community and being a part of the public dialogue. My passion is planning. And so that's why I went to Kate Freeze. I knew everybody there. They're a great firm. And so I got real lucky going over there. So now I get to do what I love the most about planning, which is just work on comprehensive master plans and focus specifically on that. So that's a little bit of my background. And so I love Woodcreek so far. It's new to me. I grew up in Bernie. It's a wonderful community. I had a chance to read the surveys and really get an idea of how the community feels about the comp plan and some of their concerns. And so had a chance to work on that. And so, yeah, with that, I want to talking about myself. I came here to talk about Woodcreek and help you guys. So I'm here for you and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
This workshop was requested by Chairman Qatar, and I told him before the meeting started that we will present based on what his wishes are for the commission. In your packet, just to tell you a little bit, you have two documents that we'll refer to, and before I begin that, I want to give to the two commissioners a very brief background. We started the comprehensive plan process and so far conducted the survey. As a citizen of Woodcreek, you received a survey. The citizens had a very vibrant response. We have a good percentage of responses, and the citizens were very clear as to what their priorities are. That is a part of the plan. But the comprehensive plan is more than that. It is a general plan, a master plan, a land use plan, a document that is designed to guide the future actions of this community. Why are you being told about the comprehensive plan? Because in the organizational structure, it is your responsibility. The plan is your responsibility, but because of resources, when contractors, and I was asked by the former mayor to help, but it is your plan. The focus of the plan is generally physical development, land use. The reason why it's your plan. It presents a vision for the future. It has long-range goals and objectives. And it will serve us for over a 10 or 20-year period, and it will guide the city in making decisions. The city of Woodcreek, I'm sure you know, is pretty much built up. So why do we need to talk about land use? Well, we have the extraterritorial jurisdiction, which we are in the fastest growing county in the nation, and land in this area is precious and is being sought after for development, whether commercial or residential. We are responsible for the extraterritorial jurisdiction in addition to what is within our city limits. So that's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of communities have comprehensive plans. Some cities opt not to have a comprehensive plan. However, it affects how the city can participate in the grant process. When there are grant processes that help you in land use, land development, and you do not have a comprehensive plan, that city is at a disadvantage, tremendous disadvantage. So not every city has it, and there are some components that are anticipated or expected of a good plan. but not everybody uses all the components and not everybody uses them. But there are components there. What you received today it was in your packet, is I'm thinking of what am I going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? How are we going to guide this discussion? And I'm very right-handed, so I'm very left-brained. So I put together, this is a very early draft of discussion. I've put together the table of contents based on where we are at this point in the comprehensive plan development. We have had the survey, we have had town hall, we know now it is time to stop talking and to start developing the plan. Yes, the work begins now. So the table of contents that is very draft, I thought we would use it not as a final document, but as a document to guide our discussion. And then this morning, we received an excellent document from Chairperson that also brings I asked the city manager to make copies and put them for you to review. I apologize, they came shortly before the meeting, but you have it to review and then Brendan can speak to that. So that's where we are. We are planning, we're meeting with you today because our next step is to reconvene the Citizens Advisory Work Group. We have an advisory work group where we have representation of residents, citizens of the Woodcreek, and we also have representation of our business partners, of which we have 3, the golf course, the liquor store, and Cambria Judea. And we are reconvening the group. We're meeting the 23rd to go ahead with the next steps towards completion of the plan. I would like to, at this point, we got a meeting this morning, and we already have some ideas of where and how we're going. But rather than tell you what we think we're going to do, I want to do this a true workshop. Tell us what you think.
I have a question to get things started, and I'm new to this, so pardon my ignorance, but I have in the back of my mind a recollection, and then Jack mentioned the 2030 master plan or something. What's the difference? Like, don't we already have something started?
Okay, in 2020 and in 2030, the city did a vision, did master plans, vision master plans. The main difference is there was little, if anything, in those plans about land use. And a master plan, so a vision plan basically tells you this is where a city is, this is where we would like our city to go, and it's focused more than land use on the goals and objectives. This is a more formal one. A comprehensive plan, first of all, is a general plan, it's a master plan, it has more components. If you look at the table of contents, some of the things that we did in the Vision 2030, you look at, there's a section on land use. Basically, it presents to you how the city is currently structured, how the city is divided into different zoning areas, residential, but it doesn't tell you much about what we would like to see in the future, how this land use is going to help us in the future or not.
I just don't, I'm sure.
I think Brandon would give a great example or explanation here, but I just wanted to offer the difference as I understood it is that a comp plan actually becomes a binding agreement once approved, and it can control funding and impact our future decisions making as the elected body. And a vision plan is a suggestion, whereas a comp plan is essentially like a formal document that must be followed, must be referenced, and sort of implies that it's not law, but it's almost like law.
Section 211.004 of the local government code requires compliance with the comprehensive plan, at least as far as zoning issues are required.
And for borrowing money, it's almost a necessity, isn't it? I mean, large sums of money, if we went out, for a bond or something like that, I mean, a comprehensive plan, is that one of the documents that a lender would be looking at? I mean, it's a pretty critical document, isn't it?
And let me also that as you look at other things, because we're looking at trails, things like that, if that shows up in some plan the city has, then you're more likely to be funded other than just have the thought, oh, let's get a trail. But if it shows that for the last 5, 10, 3 years, the city's been looking at trails, then whoever the funding agency is says, okay, they have thought this process out.
Well, Roy, have y'all thought about a schedule, a critical path schedule, when you think the end date will be on the plan? I mean, are we talking this year, next year, or when?
Yeah, what time period are you talking about? In now in 2030, beyond 2030?
I think the city was on a 10 years, I worked about 2020, 2030. The city was on a 10-year cycle for vision plans. And the city when they did 2010, it had been like 20 years before that they had not taken any action, but then became a cycle, 2010, 2020. So 2020, 2030. All right, now, the decision was made to do a comprehensive plan and move away by Mayor Whitehead and council, move away from the vision to the comprehensive plan because of the things that we just mentioned. The comprehensive plan is a document that wouldn't allow the city to pursue grant opportunities. The comprehensive plan is more than a vision. I would call it a mandate. It's binding upon not just the current council, but future councils on decisions for the future of the city.
So to speak to a timeline specifically, we have set the goal of late March for our first draft. Now, the work group has yet to meet for their first meeting, so these discussions are slightly premature, but ideally next meeting, the work group on the 23rd would be setting and sketching a timeline. And one of the big requests we have of you all today is that we need at least one member from P&Z to join us. So that would be a hope from today. Do you have a timeline that you usually see cities accomplish this from start to finish after survey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody
Depending-
on our
depending on how
committee
detailed and how broad the city chooses to cast a net in the comprehensive planning process, that determines how long it'll take. There's some cities it'll take 6 months. Other cities, larger cities like Kyle or San Marcos, it could take up to a year. And so a lot of that really has yet to be determined yet, I'd say. The process is still at the point where the city is determining what the scope of this comprehensive plan is going to be. And the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about comprehensive plans and the nature of them. And it really is different depending on each community. Just the term comprehensive means you're looking at everything. And so the city tradition, the city's tradition, vision, they haven't really been regulatory or statutory in the way that the local technical government pointed out. Chapter 211 and Chapter 213 of the Texas Local Government Code specifically addresses what a comprehensive plan can do for the community.
But does it require a city of this population to have one?
This Texas Local Government Code, state law, doesn't require that a city have a comprehensive master plan, but what it says is if you do have one, then you need to follow. Particularly when it comes to zoning, as Mayor Pro Tem was pointing out, the city's vision plans have never spelled out a land use vision for the city. They've never had what a comprehensive plan refers to as a future land use plan. That's probably one of the most important aspects of a comprehensive master plan, future land use plan.
But is it an overkill for a city this size?
I don't think so at all.
Okay.
It's not overkill. And it's overkill if you address things that maybe aren't necessary. It's overkill if you maybe look at comprehensive plans that other cities do, like Kyle or City of Austin, where they're addressing things like housing or school districts and things like that. Those things are probably not things based on the surveys that are necessary to be addressed. So it's not overkill if you stick to what your community is telling you that they would like to see you address in the comprehensive plan.
After the, I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
after the comprehensive plan is put into effect, what's going to be the ongoing responsibility of planning and zoning to that? Are we going to be called to review things, or do we have to take the initiative?
Absolutely. Well, that's determined in your comprehensive plan process. Every single comprehensive plan, the most important part of it is the implementation section. And a lot of times people joke, the comprehensive plan becomes a doorstep, or it's become something that gets shelved. Well, a lot of times it happens because a city doesn't put in the kind of depth to the implementation that they do the rest of the plan. So that is what's determined in the comprehensive planning process of implementation. That ought to be a portion of the plan that assigns responsibilities for everybody in the community. Staff, the council, planning and zoning commission, the ongoing work group. It'll assign responsible parties. It'll give milestones and timelines. Step 1 is making changes to the zoning code, the subdivision code. Step 2 is grants. So it will clearly lay out the metrics and the tracking for the comprehensive plan during the 10-year period that it addresses.
So it's up to the enthusiast. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anybody want to
Yeah.
jump in? Go ahead.
And I'd like to tie in where Jack ended out, I think. Woodcreek is more like a subdivision. I mean, we do not have much extra land. We have very little commercial activities, so no revenue generating activities. We have no infrastructure. We have no educational facilities. We don't even have gas stations. I mean, Woodcreek and Wimberley Valley really is what one should be looking at as a comprehensive plan. So that's why I'm saying, or thinking, that how much time and effort should be focused when we have such limited abilities to expand on facilities and et cetera.
Absolutely. Well, and maybe one of the most confusing parts of the comprehensive master plan is that it carries the word comprehensive. And that's just a term of art that has been started probably since the days that make no little plans. It has no magic to stir people's blood, right? So that's what the comprehensive master planning process means. Planning. And so that word had probably confused a little bit, because when you say comprehensive, you're thinking it's going to be comprehensive. But really, what it is the plan for y'all to decide. It's a kit of parts. Is really what it is. It's a kit of parts.
The best way that I would describe it is, Tomas, Mayor Rasco and I both need to have an estate plan. Now, a man like Mayor Rasco is going to have a very comprehensive estate plan with trusts and all of these different documents because of his vast and excessive wealth. I, on the other hand, am going to have a meager 3-page will to dispose of my nominal assets. They're both estate plans, but they're custom tailored to our unique needs. And in this case, it is an important mechanism under the law that can help guide where the city goes moving forward and open the door to other options for the city to get grants, get its hands on money to do some good things. So we don't have to be excessively gratuitous in what it is that we do in creating the comprehensive master plan, but it's still good to have it even if it's very basic.
I would thank you, but and I would say a comprehensive plan has a few core elements that I'd recommend and that all cities address through a comprehensive plan. The core elements really are one, it's the future land use plan. And I would say the other core element is going to be the master thoroughfare plan or the transportation plan. Why are those the two core elements? Well, your future land use plan is a core element because of what I mentioned earlier. State law says you're not required to have a comprehensive master plan, but if you do, you have to follow it. Well, what's probably the main way that a city follows a comprehensive master plan? They follow that future land use plan through zoning, because a future land use plan is not zoning, but your zoning has to follow. And it's a two-way street. Y'all are legally required, when you have a future land use plan, y'all are legally required to follow that future land use plan. You can't have residential here and then, I'm saying y'all in particular, maybe another city, they don't like this particular developer, so they say, oh, we're not going to do it. Even your comp plan says that you would, if that zoning request came along, you follow it. But it also protects the city. The developer comes in, they buy a piece of land, say they want to do industrial, and your future land use plan says residential, and so they come in for a zone change for industrial. y'all have the legal basis to deny that claim. And you can say, well, you knew what the future land use plan said before you bought the property.
Yeah, but you don't need a comprehensive plan to do that. No, we got ordinances that would prevent that,
So
that particular case that you're talking about.
you do need a comprehensive plan to adopt the future land use plan. So
I still don't understand. So future land use, like this plan is gonna say, okay, right now, this section of Woodcreek is designated as single-family residential. And our future land use plan is that that's how it's gonna stay. We're not gonna change that. And then in the future, no one can ever come in and say, we're gonna change it because it's part of our plan. As opposed to right now, I mean, someone comes in and says, hey, man, I'm buying the house right next to Davenport's and I want to turn it into a Subway. The city council says, bang, you can't do that because we don't have a comprehensive plan, but they can't do it because the zoning doesn't allow.
So I would say, it's not that the city council can't say, no, we don't want to do that. You just don't have as much of a legal basis for denying it as you would if you had a future land use plan. You know, the city always has the basis to say, well, that's not compatible. So you always have a basis for denying something, but with a future land use plan, that gives you a stronger basis for denying.
I'm really confused. We have zoning ordinances right now that establishes what can be built in areas in this city. And to change those ordinances from like agriculture or from SF1 to SF6 or 10 or 20, it has to go to this body, and this body has to recommend yay or nay, and then it goes to the city council, and the city council has to either approve it or deny it. So how does this comprehensive plan give more, I guess I'm confused.
So if you look at the origin of the plan itself, it's very citizen involved. It starts out with this massive citizen input survey. And then all along the process, you potentially continue to include focus groups or citizen input. And so the idea is that the plan that develops is this broad voice of the citizens for this is our city, this is our vision for our city, this is the future we want for our city. So it's the whole community involved. Versus an elected body is sometimes only 6 individuals. And then you have your P&Z council, however many of y'all there are, right? So that's a limited influence. And so the difference is the comp plan carries more weight. There's been more voice, there's more input, it's more forward thinking versus the decision that's in front of you on your piece of paper today and in front of only 6 members of the community. And so that's the difference. That's how it's more legally binding, is because the way it was created is more comprehensive, to throw that word around some more. So that's not to say that Subway couldn't go in next to Andy's house. It would be unlikely because it's currently zoned SF1. But if our council was swayed and our P&Z was swayed, and that's only 15 or so members of our community, perhaps a Subway could get put in there.
Okay.
You know, so, but the comp plan creates, you know, like he said earlier, it's almost like a doorstop or something. It's just, you know, a little bit more of a security basis for the city, but also something you guys have on your agenda today is looking out into the ETJ and future development and what we want. So the comp plan and your influence on it directly relates to our ETJ and the future development out there and what that will look like. So you were talking about, you know, we don't have a lot of things right now, but we do have this massive ETJ, which could be built out, and the decisions we make on the comp plan will influence what that looks like. And, you know, we might not have infrastructure now, but maybe we will in the future. And so these, you know, this guiding document isn't just about now, it's about the future of Woodcreek. And that's why it's so important, because, you know, you're forward thinking, not just right now in this moment.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So when, in terms of the ETJ, since we don't have a whole lot of authority over what happens over there, is the ETJ mentioned specifically in the comprehensive plan, section by section, or?
Absolutely is. And so zoning only applies to land that's in your city limits, but your future land use map looks at your ETJ as well. And so, like I was saying, your future land use plan signs future land use classification for all land in the city limits and all land in the ETJ. And so not only does it guide future zone changes and zoning district applications in the city, it guides future zoning applications for the ETJ if and when the point comes along when that land is annexed into the city. And so there's really two aspects to the future land use. Number one, as the council member was saying, it gives the community the opportunity to create a vision. It builds that consensus. It gives certainty to the community about how the community is going to be planned out and zoned in the future. But it also protects you. And that's the big part of what is zoning. Zoning is here to protect you. It's here to protect the nature of your community, the character of your community. The future land use plan does that too. It's here to protect you and guide you in future zoning. And at a core level, I'd say, in a perfect world, citizens shouldn't have to come down to every single zoning commission meeting to see how their leaders are making decisions. They should have that comprehensive plan there and know, okay, we've got this plan in place. So somebody does come in, they ask for the subway next to my house. I know how they're going to decide because they've got this vision that's guiding them. And in many respects, mandating them to make it. It provides lots of things for
Roar, go ahead.
One of the other things that I want to mention, when we talk about the ETJ, yes, you do not have the same, there's a difference between city limits and ETJ, but we do have jurisdiction and we do have, our ordinances are very clear, for example, on the subdivision, water signage, water quality, if somebody wants to come in and wants to build a big subdivision of 2325 on our ETJ, we have to be, now we have a comprehensive plan that talks about future land use of that area. Let me give you an example. When Blue Hawk Elementary School was built, the schools, of course, the school district, and that's the first time we had a school in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. We have nothing in our vision. We had nothing that talked about having a school in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. Working with the school district and based on relationships that we had with the school district, we were able to participate in the process. The city manager was involved, the council was involved. But that's wonderful that you have these relationships where I serve on the board, I know the superintendent and so on, and we can get to the table together. That's not the way to the future. The way to the future is to have a document that protects our rights and what we're going to see in our ETJ, which is very valuable land. So it is something that, yes, we are a small city, and to be honest with you, if you look at, we have looked at large and small and medium cities that have comprehensive plans, including some that are like ours, landmark residential cities within another city. And there, we have to take into consideration that who we are, our size, and not spend unnecessary time and resources on a document that may be wonderful for a city like Brook Springs now, but it's not applicable to us. But we are very cognizant of that. So,
Aurora, let me ask you a question. Do we have any influence at all on who comes into the ETJ? For instance, there's a porta potty out there, on Winters Mill Road, I had a beautiful home sitting up there. I'm looking at a bunch of porta potties.
I guess.
It's not in the TJ. Do we have any say on what?
To follow on, had there been a comprehensive plan in place already, and it did not include a school, because we just hadn't thought of that at the time, like, could that school not have been built there?
No, I mean, a city has certain jurisdiction in an ETJ. You don't have land use jurisdiction, but you do have subdivision jurisdiction. So when somebody wants to plat land in an ETJ, they have to come to you. You have jurisdiction for signage in ETJ, and you have a little bit of code enforcement jurisdiction in certain distance out. And so they insurance. And so with the school, you wouldn't have been able to dictate how the building's built, setbacks, those kinds of things, but they would have had to go through your platting process potentially if they were subdividing the land. And in the platting process, you look at public improvement. We have to make sure the road is properly developed, provide access. They need to dedicate right away. You look at drainage, to make sure that what's going on out there, they're not going to create too much impervious coverage and it's going to harm another property. So there are certain things that the city can do when it comes to development out in ETJ. And that's for smaller, like one type of building or one type of development. When it comes to large neighborhoods, that's different. Okay, and so for larger neighborhoods, like, I mean, y'all have, your city is pretty much built out, but y'all have this huge ETJ. There's a lot of battles left to be fought out in the ETJ over the coming years. And so what y'all are going to come up against is sort of what, my experience in Woodcreek came up against. When a developer wants to come in and put a huge subdivision out in ETJ, the city's got some power there. Because a lot of times, like what do big developers ask for? They ask for concessions. A lot of times they don't want to comply with everything we have. They're going to ask for concessions. They're probably going to come ask you for something like a development agreement. They're going to say, we waive this, we waive that. City of Woodcreek, like Bulverde, it doesn't have utilities. So you don't have as much leverage in that respect to say, oh yeah, if you want our utilities, we're going to annex you and we're going to zone you and apply our future things to you. But they will probably, and they ask for a municipal utility. And so a lot of times you have the opportunity to say, okay, if we consent to this special utility district, municipal utility district, public improvement district, you can say we are organic, and here's how we're going to zone you. Here's how you're going to develop. Here's how you're going to develop. And so that's why the comprehensive plan is so important. If not to figure out how to improve some things within your city limits, it gives you leverage, it gives you backbone and strength out that EPJ. That's where you're going to need it most. It really, how much leverage, how much power you have out there depends on the nature of the development.
Okay, and then I have one final comment. I love, Deborah, the part of the comprehensive plan where surveys were sent out and everyone was involved. Like that's rock star if we can figure out how to keep that going. I have no idea if that was the case with the vision survey, and I just remember looking at the vision plan, if you will. But as Jack mentioned, I mean, apparently some decisions were made or people's minds were made up based off of that vision survey, because apparently at some point in the past, the citizens, or if the citizens were involved, whoever came up with that plan said, yeah, man, we want to come up with different kinds of housing. We want some multifamily. We want some business. Let's do that. And that influenced some decisions, maybe not legally, but had that been a comprehensive plan instead of a vision plan or whatever, would there have been a different outcome with this Brook Meadow housing development? I mean, would hands have been tied, so to speak, saying, no, people, we talked about this 10 years ago. It's part of our comprehensive plan. And we already agreed that if a developer wants to come in and put 20 houses on these kinds of properties.
I think that's a great question. So yeah, your vision plan is narrative based. It's sentences, it's objectives and things like that. It's not, there's certain aspects of the vision plan which are more subjective. So yeah, I think if you had a comprehensive master plan in place that had a future land use plan that had very clear land use classifications, a lot of times in a future land use plan, there's a bit of a conversion matrix that says, okay, in this land use classification, these particular zoning districts they make sense. They're more critical. So yeah, with that future land use plan in place, I think more of a guide for the community to apply an appropriate zoning and say, well, this is the kind of zoning we have. This is the kind of density, this is the lots. Yeah, there would have been more objective references and guidelines for the city to follow.
Good question.
Just a little bit to your question. And you have a Vision 2020 plan that was done back in 2009, 2010. Many of our residents know nothing about that plan. Very little. If you talk to a former council member who participated in that process, it was so subjective that at the time, the leadership decided not to implement. The city manager at the time or the city administrator at the time. And it was obviously supported, or if not supported, it was nothing was done about pushing that plan through and implementing. That is a vision plan. It is a suggestion, and one person, one council can decide to do it. That's not the case with what the attorney read. We can choose not to have a comprehensive plan. But once we do it, it is an objective measure, and it is something that the government code tells us. You have it, you do it. Not one person, not one council member, not one mayor pro tem can say, I choose not to. That happened to us with Vision 2020, ancient history, and very frustrating for one people.
So I'm all in favor of a comprehensive plan and land use plan for sure, as long as the comprehensive plan is sort of limited to what we financially can take on. I mean, you're looking at the vision thing, it's a wish list which costs millions of dollars to implement. So I think we need to be realistic that we have a very small budget to work on. So let's not talk about $1 million projects and spend hours and days and months on that, okay? As for land use, I'd like to see a map of what land does the city control. You said it's very little, so that would be a good start for me to start understanding better here. I mean, if we're going to spend all this time talking about building things, building trails and parks and commercial areas, I'd like to know what kind of land we have. I also like to see that map include the land ownership of the Quicksand golf course. Because I heard that you guys had a meeting or some discussion about some political ads or political whatever by the entrance of Woodcreek, and Woodcreek could not deny those postings because you didn't own that land, which surprised me greatly because the Quicksand golf course is nowhere near the entrance of 12 and Woodcreek Drive. So I would like for all of us to see a map clearly showing the land that the city owns and the land that Quicksand owns and take it from there.
Don't we have a map like
Well,
that?
if you can look, we have several maps, but we can make sure at the next meeting we can bring it up. But when you go on our website, shows the how the city's owned. It shows which is actually city owned. Also in our Parks Master Plan, it shows some of those areas too. But we can combine it all. But basically, the city does not control that much area unless it's right by the streets.
And that area where you're talking about, I believe those big political signs.
Yeah.
That's on.
That's golf course property.
Golf property.
Golf course property.
Mr. Lewis, or City Manager, so would you mind sharing that document I created that compiles all of this? So I made a document that has similar city comp plans, cities like Sunset Valley, Pantego, up in Fort Worth, Dallas area. So these are landlocked cities like ours, similar populations. Some have a little bit more money, some have less money than us. That golf course is like property is an easement. It's really old. It's not on a lot of our land maps, but I'll add some more links in so y'all can see some of these things. But I just wanted to quickly address the comment about financials. And I'm younger than many people here, and I don't my finances aren't just about what's happening in my bank account and my expenses right now, right? I have a savings account. And that savings account is for when things breaks or future trips. So the idea of the comp plan and these wish lists, we shouldn't limit our wish list. And this is an opinion, because our city can apply for grants. Our city can seek funding and matches with TechStock. And what he was saying earlier about the walking trails, having a comp plan in place that shows walking trails, shows we've made the effort, would be more likely we get assistance with those things. So the comp plan isn't just about planning for what we need now and affording, balancing that budget. It's also like, what do our citizens want in the future? And how do we start coming up with those funds? Because we should maybe do what our citizens want and make these things happen for them and budget accordingly and manage our finances accordingly. I mean, I have to do that in my personal account, and I think the city could be doing that as well.
Okay.
Well, I think the success of the comprehensive plan is going to fall on the shoulders of the enthusiasm of P&Z commissioners. Is that a true statement? I think the success of the comprehensive plan is going to fall on the shoulders of the enthusiasm of the P&Z commissioners.
I,
Is that a truism?
well, I think that
Are we the keeper of the?
because the
Under
critical,
Under 213003, a comprehensive plan may be adopted by ordinance following a hearing at which the public is given the opportunity to give testimony, reviewed by the municipality's planning and zoning or planning commission or department if one exists. So in other words, one of the steps, well, I mean, partial, yeah. This committee will certainly, this commission will have to review, but ultimately, the buck will stop with the council in determining whether or not to approve by ordinance the master comprehensive plan. But yes, this commission will be a gatekeeper to some degree.
I have a different perspective. My perspective is not that the responsibility would fall on your shoulders. I think the comprehensive plan will make the planning and zoning process and the work of the commissioners one of certainty, one that they have a document that has been a document that clearly states what is, no, you cannot have a subway that lot next to your house, Mr. Davenport. You cannot build one there, or you cannot take your house, demolish your house and build a subway. It's going to be clearly because, so, I mean, I know that's almost a ridiculous example, but now you have some issues. For example, I'll be very clear with you. One of the things that is going to be part of this is looking at the ordinances in Title 15, which deal with land use, specifically 154, 155, and hopefully 156. And those ordinances, in many cases, are not in compliance, have not been updated to comply with some of the sections of state law. Also, they are unclear. You have some sections, if you look at the subdivision 155, is a big section. It doesn't provide a difference whether this is going to be a residential subdivision or whether it's going to be a commercial subdivision. It lacks specificity as to some of the things that you as a city should be looking into a subdivision being developed in the ETJ. And that's part of the work that Kate Freese is doing for us. So I think that when you're done, you have a document that clearly states that has looked at not only the present, but the future of your land use and the opportunities to obtain funding to support some of the things that our citizens have expressed as being priorities for them, but also a clearer code of ordinances that will make, in my opinion, your work easier. Your decisions will be guided by clearer, stronger documents.
Well, I'm going to get back to what Tomas was talking about, about the land use here in the city. There's just this many that I've gone over these overlays, this many, say 1 acre or more that offers any kind of development. The rest of the city's built out. I mean, there's little lots here. Well, there's 24 lots out here, but what we're really talking about is ETJ. I mean, we built out this city, except for these, well, this outfit here owns 24 lots across Doodle. And so there are a few lots left. But I'm back to Tomas's. We don't have any acres here to talk about, just a few acres. And of course, that's SF1. And so that's not going to be any commercial development in there. So what we're really talking about, what can we do in the ETJ? Am I missing something?
Well, two things real fast. First, when it comes to the burden of the comprehensive plan process falling on the shoulders of the P&Z, there's three main players in a comprehensive plan process. Number one, you've got the comprehensive plan work group committee. What they are is a steering committee. They steer for the day-to-day kind of actions during that planning process. they're the worker bees on this, in addition to citizens that are part of the process. You've got that comp plan work. They're the worker bees of the project. They're the ones responding to the community. Then there's you guys, y'all are kind of in the middle. And the role that y'all serve, you're the key advisory group in the process. And as Bud was mentioning, y'all are the ones that are tasked with providing a recommendation on the plan to the city council. Y'all don't approve the plan, but y'all are required per law, same way you are with zone change cases, you're required by law to provide a recommendation to the city council on whether or not y'all think this comprehensive plan, the community and the comprehensive plan work group committee is developed. So there you go. That's y'all's role in the process.
But I like to see the comprehensive plan put more emphasis on the ETJ. That's a potential growth for the city, for housing and for businesses and that kind of stuff. Because we're flat built out in this city. And so I don't know what the comprehensive plan can do to address land use within our city limits. I might be missing something. I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just, trying to.
These are great questions. These are the questions that are always asked in the comprehensive planning process. What does it have to offer to what's in the city limits? And what does it have to offer what's in the ETJ? For the city limits, I say the main thing that the comprehensive plan has to offer is protecting and preserving and maintaining what you already have. Because that's the two sides of the coin that a comprehensive plan is. One side it protects you, on the other side it plans for what you're going to be. And so it's going to protect you in the city. You guys are not too far from Austin. And look at what's happening to some of Austin's internal areas. There are people coming in wanting to do changes on their established single family lots, wanting to subdivide it into two. All the communities I've worked in, you're going to have people that are potentially buying vacation homes and wanting to rent them out for short-term rentals. That's zoning. You're going to have people that are going to be wanting to build another house in the back that's supposedly used for guests, but who knows what happens back there. That's a second dwelling. And so that land use plan gives you, when somebody comes in and says, I want to get an SUP, a specific use permit for this, it protects what you've got here.
That's a good point.
But in the ETJ, it plans. The other big aspect of a comprehensive plan that I mentioned, future land use plan is big. We talked about that. And the other one is master transportation plan. That one is key too, because what that does is that preserves the way traffic is done out in the ETJ. You don't want to leave it to developers just to decide what the circulation systems in their developments are. That's assuming they're able to get past the city with whatever they do, with utility districts and those types of things. It's a battle out there. It's like a chess game. And cities are, we don't have the tools we used to with annexation. And so we've got to be even more creative. And so your key tool out in that ETJ is your subdivision.
Well, what is really scary is the Dripping Springs ETJ is 4 miles from our city.
Yeah. So out in your ETJ, when the developers come in, you want to be able to tell them, here's where the road's going to go. Here's where the future arterial is going to go. Here's where the collector's going to go, because we've analyzed this and we want to make sure that development that happens out here doesn't suffocate our city with traffic. Here are the improvements you guys are going to build. So right now, you don't have a master transportation plan. Just like you don't have a future land use plan, you don't have that master transportation plan. So with a master transportation plan, when somebody comes out in ETJ, you can say, here's the roads, here's the right of way. Oh yeah, well, you can require a traffic impact analysis. Ways, to put it bluntly, how to kill development in your ETJ, how to kill bad development in your ETJ. That's your arsenal that you need out there. So
how do you put these things together? How do you figure out the distinction between maintaining what you have, which is up for debate all the time anyhow, because I'm not quite sure what that means. In terms of the issue of growth, is growth automatically built into your logic, or is there something we have to actively say?
So growth is a part of the comprehensive plan process.
In terms of population especially.
So what's typically done in a comprehensive plan is you look at the region. And so you look at the growth that's happening in the region and you get an understanding, and maybe I use the war analogies too much, but you get an understanding of what kind of troops are going to be coming your way, what kind of guns they have, what kind of weapons they have. So you get an idea of what's the growth projections and what are those development patterns that are coming at you. Is it townhouse? Is it apartments? Is it, 4,000 square foot lots? Is it smaller than that? So that's what you look at. You look at the kind of development patterns that you have, and and your comprehensive plan says, we recommend that you redo the subdivision code for this. You look at, you know, in my experience, boat and RV storage is going in everywhere. Self-storage is huge. And you know, and in RV parks and places to store your RV are huge in my neck of the woods. I don't know what it's like here. So what do those kind of developments have? Tons of impervious coverage. And so in your ETJ, some of your tools are limited. You've got your subdivision code, but there are some instances where people can do development out in the ETJ without having to plat because they're exempt from platting. If it's over 5 acres, they don't have to plat. So in your subdivision code, if you don't, there are special mechanisms.
They run that by me, over 5 acres,
If it's over 5 acres in your ETJ and it's already
but not in the
platted,
city limits.
not in the city limits, but in your ETJ.
Okay.
So if you've got a lot in your ETJ that's already platted, or if it's over 5 acres, and they're exempt from platting, you're kind of limited in how you can govern how they develop that piece of property. But there are tools out there that the city can prepare for through the planning process, looking at what's coming your way, and to better equip you guys with tools to stop that kind of stuff. And so if somebody wants to come in your ETJ and they want to put an RV park or a boat and RV storage right next to your floodplain, there's a way to get a drainage analysis to make sure they don't put in as much impervious coverage. So those are all the things you can look at through the comprehensive planning process to prepare and say, this is what we think's coming at us. Here's what we think about it. You know, some communities want that. So then they come up with ways to shape other communities. I've read your survey. Clearly the survey shows all growth in the city or in the ETJ. So that's the plan. Let's come up with tools. Let's develop tools for implementing that plan. That's what your citizens said they want. And so, yeah.
So Aqua Texas, which controls the water and sewer, have to have an integral part of this discussion, I would think, in the ETJ, how you build out the ETJ.
Sorry,
Aqua Texas, which has the water and sewer systems in place, and that would have to then grow out into the ETJs. So they have to be at the table to discuss this too, I would
Oh,
think.
yeah, it's always great to have all the stakeholders at the table. TxDOT, you know, at least in one of your meetings, I don't know how many meetings, you know, I think that's going to be determined probably at the work group, but those meetings, not only do you want your citizens, yeah, you want TxDOT, you want those other governmental entities there to get an idea of, you know, where their service lines, where's Aqua's service lines, where are they planning to expand? You know, they're in the business to sell water. And so it's a good idea to get an idea of what their plans are, because the more infrastructure they're putting in, the easier it's going to be for developers.
Well, let me ask you a question. You mentioned something that triggered me. You implied that you read this comprehensive plan and the results, and it implies that citizens don't really want any development. Is that unrealistic? I mean, based on your experience of, you know, planning development for other cities and all that, is that unrealistic to assume that the city doesn't want any kind of development, from a business standpoint or development at all? Just leave it like it is. In other words, shut the doors and this is it. I mean, is that realistic?
I'd say it's unrealistic to say that you're not going to have any development in your ETJ. Honestly, I hate to say that, but it's unrealistic to say that you're not going to have any development. But it is realistic to say that we don't want growth. That's a reasonable statement. This is ETJs are not meant to have development. Cities are meant to have development. The ETJ was invented in order to give a city the ability to keep it undeveloped, but stuff that does develop, keep it in a manner that'll be consistent for when the city does annex it. Unfortunately, our state government has taken away our ability to annex. The ETJ was meant to be a holding place for future annexation and future development. And because the state government has taken away our ability to annex, now we've got this ETJ and it's just this weird place where we're like, well, what do we do with this? And so I think it's totally realistic to say we don't want our ETJ to grow. I think but in the plan for that, the plan for keeping your ETJ undeveloped, it's realistic to plan for that, but it's unrealistic to say that nothing's going to happen out there. So that's y'all's role as decide when it does attempt to come to you, y'all have the ability to say, you know what, if you're going to do it, here's how you're going to do it. And it's going to be done according to our zoning. And here's how, and we want to keep it very low density. And the way to do that is through your comprehensive planning process and your future land use plan to say, what happens out here? We want it 1 to 5 acres, or we want it 5 acres. And so that's the growth that you get.
Well, you
Does that
know,
make sense?
even recently, I've sent some emails to some of our distinguished council members, recommending an economic development corporation. I come from an area where, well, I won't get into that, but it developed huge. I mean, it's what they got is unbelievable because they use their imagination. But what I'm hearing now is we ought to just hands off RUTJ and not really develop something like an economic development corporation, which really has the ability to go out and speak for the city where the city can't do that. But what I'm hearing is, the ETJ is really hands off. And so there are opportunity for bringing in additional revenue for the city is really, it's not there. Is that right?
Tomas, you would make a comment? Sure.
One more comment, yes. Since we live in Woodcreek, we all need Wimberley for our services, the food stores, the medical, Wimberley school system, whatever. Has there ever been any discussion with the people of Wimberley to try to have sort of an integrated, comprehensive plan for both communities? Because we are sharing a lot of resources. We're sharing the same Aqua Texas, sewer and water, etc.
We, at one time, had a very active interaction with the City of Wimberley, and the school district, and the City of Woodcreek, because exactly what you say, we are part of this battle. I said today, 80% of my life is probably spent in Wimberley, where I volunteer, where I do my shopping, where I go to my doctor. Okay? So, Mayor Rasco has restarted the process of communication and interaction with the City of Woodcreek. We meet, I was unable to go to a meeting last month, but to a meeting this week. And I think that you will be seeing some initiatives. We're already talking about how, and if you read one thing that if you read the Wimberley, City of Wimberley comprehensive plan, which is very short, 34 pages, you will see that they have a vision for the valley. And I think we should too. I think part of our comprehensive plan should address how all of these things are related and how we can share the resources of the valley and how we can help each other. So yes, Commissioner Palm, that is an initiative that Mayor Roscoe has begun, and we are in the process, and we will be hearing. I don't feel comfortable with going deeper into it, but we will be shortly getting information on some of the things we will do.
Would it be useful for this commission to read a copy of the Wimberley Comprehensive Plan?
I read it, and I think that I read it, I got a paper copy, but I'm sure it's online. But I would tell you that it's a very good plan to read. It is, I wouldn't call it a comprehensive plan per se, because it doesn't have, for example, the emphasis on massive transportation and the use plan that would. But it has several things that I like. It has things about listening to the citizens and making sure the plan represents what the citizens want, preserving the environment, preserving the character, and then also the vision for the future that all of us are part of this family. So it won't take a lot of your time, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I will read it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing to kind of qualify the statement that I made about it being realistic to not want growth in your ETJ, but it being unrealistic that you won't have any. A good example of this is, and I always like to use other cities I've worked in as an example, Bulverde. On their future land use map, their future land use plan, in their ETJ, in a certain area, they said it was agriculture. So technically, the city wants that area to be agriculture. That means they don't want any development out there, right? Does that mean that's what happened out there when developers wanted to develop it? No. So they had KB Homes wanted to come in and develop that property.
Okay.
And because the city had that future land use plan, they had the ability to negotiate with those developers and basically say no, because the developers wanted concessions for the subdivision code. They wanted concessions with infrastructure and the type of streets because the city had a master transportation plan. They wanted concessions. So through that negotiation process, through the tool that the city had, what did the city end up getting? 5-acre lots. That's a lot better than 4,000 square foot KB homes, right? So that's a good example. It was realistic to say we don't want anything, but at the end of the day, they got development, but they got development that they want.
Okay, I'm going to ask to maybe a final comment or
One more
two.
thing.
We've got some people with some other obligations, so
The
go ahead.
meeting-
I
the
want to
next-
pick up this conversation by way of a later date, so you're not off the hook. Go
The
ahead.
next meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Work Group is on the 23rd at 10 o'clock. And Councilmember Hines spoke to that we would like, we feel that we should have representative of planning and zoning. So you and I have talked, but I hope that you can have the representative there for the next. Thank you so much for your time and for your questions.
Thank you so much. And again, you're not off the hook. This is a great conversation. We just kind of started as. Thank you. Okay, I don't think we take any action on that. That was a nice discussion. You all raised some good points. Good commission. That's good. Okay, moving along to item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on a possible change in zoning classification. And I won't repeat all this. Everybody knows what this is. We've got a bunch of proposals for changing things in Brook Meadow. And I think what we want to do, I mean, we probably have, and I know we have a whole bunch of questions to ask about specifics on this, because there's just so many things going on here. So I'd like to kind of open this up for discussion and see if members of our commission would like to ask questions about these things. I'll start with one question. And again, my questions are pretty fundamentally definitional kind of things. I would like to hear what the real distinctions relevant to us are among district, area, neighborhood, and subdivision. And all of these different terms, maybe others, have been used in different reporting about the proposal for Brook Meadow. And it gets really confusing. And so I guess another way to ask that question is, what is Brook Meadow? Anybody want to handle that?
Well, let me give a little bit of a history of Brook Meadow, and maybe it'll answer the question. When the city petitioned to be incorporated, that was an area that was within that petition. It was on the ballot. And after the election, then it was part of the city of Woodcreek as all the other areas. So any distinction, basically, it had been a POA before, I believe, but it had been dissolved. So Brook Meadow is a part of the city of Woodcreek.
Well, what is it?
It's streets.
Is it a district?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it's not. It is an area that, I guess for purposes of what we're discussing here, it is an area that has colloquially been come to know as Brook Meadow. And in someone's mind, that may extend a block over one direction, this way, that way. But I think everyone generally agrees it is at least one particular area of the city of Woodcreek. And for purposes of this proposed zoning overlay, the exact parameters of Brook Meadow will be defined by the area that is shown within the ordinance to be burdened by the Brook Meadow overlay.
I'm going to pass this over with one follow-up comment to that. I've noticed that at different times, we've seen different versions of the proposal. The most recent one has information included in it that were not included in the proposals that we reviewed 2 meetings ago. So.
What information
I'm
is that?
asking for what
Well,
was
basically, that
actually-
information was what was provided at a previous meeting that was included in one of their packets. And so that was just forwarded on to the commission.
Well, I've asked another, I mentioned this to Bud. I don't know who came up with this overlay, but I compared this overlay to the Hayes County Appraisal District yesterday. They don't match. And so I'm giving you, I've had a discussion with you,
Right.
and I'll just give that to you. I don't think it really, the boundaries are probably still there, but there's a lot of confusion in here.
Tomas?
So I'm new to this commission and this issue, so I don't know the history of prior discussions about this in great detail or at all, really. But I did read some documents saying that currently the Brook Meadows area would allow up to 3 lots per acre, if I'm correct. I read that somewhere. That's the current overlay, Zoom, whatever. And now we want to make it a minimum 1 acre. What prompted this whole discussion about changing things which have been in place since the 1970s? And my second question is, as was mentioned here, what's the difference between Brook Meadow and Woodcreek? The answer is nothing. So if we're going to do an overlay, why didn't you do an overlay of the entire Woodcreek area?
I think we've got a council member here that would probably be great to answer some of those questions.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Chris, could you
Introduce
pick up the
yourself,
microphone?
introduce yourself, please, to the,
Hi, my name's Chris Grummert. I'm a new council member. Chris Grummert? Okay, all right. What was the question? Go ahead and repeat, sorry.
Yeah, question was that, as far as I can see, the existing, I guess, covenant limitations is that no more than 3 lots per acre in Brook Meadow. And this proposal to make it a minimum 1 acre, what prompted this changing of whatever was put in place in the 70s now?
There isn't actually anything previous other than what's written in our subdivision code, which is 12,000 square feet acre, or 12,000 square feet size lot. There was a subdivision that had proposed smaller lots than that. And the citizens of Brook Meadow got together and go, we would like something to protect us from future development. Because they saw a large 5-acre lot being broken into smaller lots. I knocked on every single door in Brook Meadow multiple times on this one issue. And the general consensus was 1 acre is a good number. We like that idea. Because as they are now, even though they're platted often as in half acres, people live on them as like 1.5 acres. There's also several acre houses. They're just bigger lots compared to the rest of the. So it's a citizen driven. They wanted to protect their neighborhood.
Yeah, but Chris, I drive on Brook Meadow probably every day, okay? And I see lots of very small lots on one side of a road. And I see townhomes and I see 4 or 5 duplexes being built. That is Brook Meadows as well, isn't it?
Correct.
So did you talk to the people who lived on the other side of the street or just on the side which has a big acreage?
So I talked to everybody except for the apartments, because the manager at the apartments doesn't like you knocking on doors. But I talked to everyone, including the duplexes, the villas, everyone there, and they were not happy about the small size of that subdevelopment, and they wanted to protect the rest of it. And just so you know, there's different zones. What we're addressing in this Brook Meadow ordinance is the SF1 section, not the townhomes, not the duplexes, not the apartments, not the commercial. It's only the SF1 section of Brook Meadow. So there's right on the corner, everything's SF1 on one side, and then you see the townhomes on the other.
So what you're saying is that the people who live on the other side of a road would like to maintain the view of more land across the street.
Correct.
For their own benefit. They rather look at some acreage as opposed to looking at homes our own size.
So the general consensus when I was talking to the people in Brook Meadow, they said, we bought into an area that had larger lots. That was our intention. That's what we wanted. They also like the street trees. I mean, the things that they talk about are the trees, the space between it, these larger lot sizes. And they realized that because of the subdivision, they realized, oh, the city doesn't actually have any protection for our neighborhood, and based on what we want it to be. So this was a solution.
Well, Chris, there's something like 90 homes in the overlay. And the best I can find, there's about 5 really lots that are affected. And what's surprising to me is not one person in these 5 big lots has come before this board and say, we want this. Not one person has come before and addressed that they want this overlay. Now, I'm not talking about the 5 acres. You know, that's a different, we had a lot of people come. But nobody's, except you don't have a big lot, but no one has come before this board and say, who owns some of these large acres, 2.8, 2.0, 1.8. None of those people have come before us and say, we support this overlay. And then again, though, no one's come before us and say, we don't like it either. I mean, it's so, you know, if somebody is in this audience that owns one of these big parcels that would like to come up and address us and tell us, yes, they understand, they'd like to have this overlay, that's another input to us. And I know we will eventually send out 200 letters, but before we do that, I'd like to have a citizen who's affected, because we're only talking about 5, the best I can understand. Well, why are we doing this for just 5 people?
If I may clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are more than 5 it affects. Now think about it this way. Currently, it's written as somebody can subdivide down to 12,000 square feet. That means everybody in Brook Meadow, because the smallest lot in Brook Meadow is mine and my neighbors, which is a ½ acre. That could be divided up. And then it just, the whole Brook Meadow could become, well, he's shaking his head, but it's a
No,
possibility.
you couldn't, because you're on a ½ acre and 12,000 square feet is 0.275 acres.
So you,
But there's plenty of other acreages.
not many. I mean, how many do you think?
I will disagree with you.
Well, I don't know, but it's 90. It's probably less. It's got to be less than 15. Let's say it's less than 15.
Could take advantage of 155.44 and go less than, which would then give Chris the ability to subdivide based on 155.44 as written.
But is anybody in the audience here? I saw that gentleman over there. Come up and address us. Would you mind doing that? I don't care. I just want somebody who's affected that will come up and say something.
3 lots over there.
What size?
I guess I'll be on the east side.
I mean, what size lot?
Right next door to those duplexes, those old duplexes.
Okay, what size lots are those? What size lots are you talking about? 0.7?
About 3.
Okay.
And I want the overlay.
Steve, could you state that?
Was that
You said 0.7 acres?
correct?
You can't build a house in it.
Divided by 3?
Multiplied times 3?
Multiplied or divided?
I've got 3 lots.
3 lots that cover 0.7 acres.
Correct.
Got
it. Okay.
So you won't be able to build. You won't be able to build. That's your problem, not mine. You won't be able to build if you have one, you need an acre to build a house.
Well, I can decide if I want overlay.
Pardon?
I can decide if I want overlay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you're not affected. I'm talking about people that are affected. Well, I guess you are affected because you won't be able to build on those lots.
Yes, he will.
How?
Because it will only prevent the future subdivision of lots to
Well,
less than 1
That's
acre.
interesting. So he can build, but the future people can't. Now, what kind of arrangement
Wait,
is
hold on,
this?
just so I understand.
I'm
So
confused.
like currently, if you have a piece of property and it's 2 acres, like it's platted as 2 acres right
Yes.
now. And all we're saying is that if we do this, the smallest they can divide that is into 2 1-acre lots.
Correct, unless they otherwise receive a variance from the city, which
Okay.
that option always applies under the law.
Okay.
Hypothetically speaking, I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Steve Passalacqua.
Steve could still, even in spite, let's say this overlay is approved, even in spite of that, Steve could apply.
Yeah, it's just
For
saying that
variance.
if he has greater than an acre, he can't divide it up into a chunk that's less than an acre.
I'm not worried. I don't plan on doing it anyway.
Correct.
We're right.
So this is grandfathered in. If you already have lots, you can build on them even after it
You
changes.
you can build on your lot consistent with the city's present code of ordinances. So in other words, if what it is that you propose to build meets the SF1 requirements, knock yourself out and build.
Well, what about his heirs? What about his heirs or when he sells the lots? They're screwed, aren't they?
No,
Why?
because he is allowed to transfer what it is that he owns, and building may occur on those lots consistent with the zoning regulations in place. He can build a house on all 3 of those lots if he wants to.
Well, I'm back to my original question. There are only about 4 or 5 blocks of acreage that we're messing around with. So why are we talking about 90 homes? I don't understand what's,
Tomas, go ahead.
Well, I sort of agree with what Jack is saying. Why aren't we asking these people who will be impacted,
That's what
who
I-
have 2, 3, 4, 5 acres, how they view this? Because that ties into the legal question about, does the city take on any legal liability by diminishing the value of those people's acreages?
Well, I think you should ask them. I think they've already been asked. Maybe not by you personally, but like I said, Chris did a pretty thorough job.
No one's addressed us, period. No one has addressed us on this issue.
Yeah, okay, well,
And what really concerning me is I watched the dialogue between you and Chris the other night at the community, at the CM meeting.
Right.
And there was about a half a dozen or a dozen questions. Y'all were going back and forth. Good night. But not one question that addressed property rights. And that kind of threw me. Not one question addressed the property rights. And that to me is a biggie. I mean, maybe it's an oversight, or maybe I just misunderstood, but I went back and looked at those questions and none of them addressed the property rights of an owner.
Yeah, and I think it's fair in response to that to say conversations have been had in executive session with this commission and with city council, but
You said, what was that word you used?
conversations have been had. I know, I get it. I know what you're, but the point is, under the Vested Rights Act, Chapter 245, municipalities do have the express statutory authority to regulate lot sizes and lot dimensions. And that is, whether or not I agree with this zoning overlay ordinance or this commission does, a zoning overlay is a valid exercise of a municipality's police authorities under the Vested Rights Act. And it's not within my purview to speculate on the wisdom of that. That's what this commission is for, and that's what the city council is for. And that's why, in advance of any vote occurring on this, all affected property owners within a certain distance, as defined under the local government code, will be given notice and occasion to show up, and these conversations can be had. But let there be no doubt that the questions that Councilmember Grummert asked were very direct and pointed, and I think designed to point out and make very clear that this is a lawful exercise of the city's authority under the law.
I don't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
is in terms of like the people who are involved, the actual homeowners, I'm wondering now if the overlay goes into effect and that places a real great limit, like we've been talking about, in terms of how people can manage their property. And so are we kind of like putting a stranglehold on property owners in terms of what they can do with their property eventually? In other words, what if there's no market for 1 acre lots where people want to sell it? And I'm just thinking in terms of the folks who sold the 5 acres to the previous developer we were talking about. They sold it all to one developer because one person was able or willing to buy all that at one time. Now, when I talk to real estate people, they tell me something kind of interesting. And I'm not stating this as fact, but if you're going to sell a 1 acre lot in a place like Woodcreek, somebody's going to have to buy that who's planning on building a pretty big house to justify the cost of the 1 acre.
Well, I agree with that somewhat. The thing of it is, you talk about property rights, property values or whatnot. Those duplexes got put up on the north side of town. That didn't help the property values of the people there. The apartment buildings got put in. That didn't help those people.
You really believe that? You really
But,
believe
in
it?
terms, let me
Oh,
finish,
yeah,
Jack.
absolutely.
Let me finish my idea, please.
I
So,
absolutely.
but what
Who wants to
happens
buy
if,
a house and apartment complex in their backyard? Would you? Looking down in
so
your
what
backyard.
happens if, the person
Well,
can't sell their
I
lot?
answer the question. I mean, that's wrong.
Okay, the other question is, and again, this may not be illegal so much as maybe ethical or traditional in terms of what right does a property owner have on what the person next to them is doing with their land if it doesn't affect them directly?
Oh, hey, I live next door to a house.
Which is what we're doing, in fact, with overlay.
That's kind of a question you want to ask somebody else.
No.
I'd like to have a carport myself.
I think that's why it's going to be very important to get a more general consensual response to this proposal. I would very strongly suggest that the city consider going beyond the 500 feet parameter.
200 feet.
200, 500, and kind of pull the entire city, because that would give a sense for like how everybody else feels about this, which I think is important.
I think once you hear the city, that you should honor that. I mean, there are too many meetings where people come up and say what they want, and thank you for your comments, and they go the same. Yeah, you know about that. So, hopefully things have changed. We'll see.
So I have a question for the commissioner. Am I the only one who feels kind of strange about the fact that this overlay only covers part of our city? Am I the only one who have a problem with
No,
that?
I agree completely. That was going to be one of my comments, but I think I try to simplify things down. I get confused too easily otherwise. But it seems to me that if just hypothetically speaking, if you said, okay, for the whole city, once we approve this, from this point forward, the min lot size is 1 acre. Like, so what? That it kind of gets to what you're saying. That's only going to affect, I mean, unless someone comes along and starts buying this half acre and this half acre and this half acre, and now they own 1.5 acres together, but it's already zoned and platted. I mean, they have to replat it as a 1.5 acre
Yes.
lot and then say, well, now I want to divide it down into, right? I mean, isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so to get to your point, I mean, we could simplify this and just say for the city of Woodcreek, if I'm not proposing this, I'm just saying if we wanted to move forward with this, for the whole city of Woodcreek, from this point forward, the smallest plat size you can do is 1 acre. Right? Does everyone agree with that? Great. If so, awesome. If not, why not?
I like the principle, but most homes are half an acre to a third of an acre.
It doesn't apply to them.
I know, but you want to have some resemblance of unified sort of price levels, I would say, in a specific community.
Right.
And so if we're going to do something like that, I would look for a smaller number than 1 acre for sure, okay?
Yeah. Well, that was my next question as well. I mean, 1 acre, if the smallest plat size is already a third of an acre, then it seems a little bit
Because that's what the average lot is, probably half an acre to a third of an acre.
Right.
So I mean, if we should look at the
Not-
number, that should be the number to look at,
Woodcreek, the average is a quarter acre.
a quarter acre.
Isn't
And
that
that's how
right?
it traditionally have been.
Quarter acre at Woodcreek, average,
I have not gone through and measured every one of them.
but most of them are quarter acre.
And you know, one of the things we're talking about in this vision and comprehensive thing is to maintain Woodcreek's character.
Yeah.
And Woodcreek's character is lots of less than half an acre. Okay?
Right.
The outliers are the bigger ones there.
Is this something, Aurora, maybe you can answer this question, but getting back to our comprehensive plan, whoever, getting back to our comprehensive, is this something that can be integrated or incorporated into the comprehensive plan instead of doing two separate things?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was thinking as I'm listening, this is exactly the kind of situation that a future land use plan is designed for, to eliminate having to take situations in one area of the city or another area of the city on a case-by-case basis. If y'all had a future land use plan, the citizens would have gotten together during the planning process and looked at the whole entire city. And the citizens of the neighborhood would have been at that meeting potentially too. And you would have heard the whole spectrum saying what they have a vision for that neighborhood being. And so that would have been incorporated into your land use plan, and potentially you have a land use plan that says this area, this land classification for this area is, what you call estate lots, 1 acre or more. Or you have, or half an acre. Just depends. This is what you talked about. This is what a future land use plan is intended for, to guide the commission in a conversation like this. So people in that neighborhood know what the vision is.
I think Brandon answered our questions.
Absolutely.
We are jumping the gun here. We need to table this discussion until we have a land use plan.
And one other thing I was going to add to state law, whenever somebody subdivides, when you have an established subdivision that's already platted out, as you point out, if anybody wants to make more than one lot, where one lot exists and you want to carve it into two, that's called a residential replat. And that requires that all of the properties within 200 feet, they have to get a notification. And so, in terms of property rights, I've been trying to figure that out my entire career, where the intersection is between zoning and property rights. But when it comes to the state requires, state law says that if anybody wants to plat, then everybody within 200 feet has to get notice. So I think what the state's acknowledging is the public does have a say in how properties that are already platted, how they're potentially developed and carved up.
It also requires mandatory approval if all requirements are met.
It does, but it requires notice, so everybody has the chance to come out and have a public.
Yes, it does, but to be clear, someone submits a plat application, and that plat application meets with the requirements of the law and the city's code of ordinance. There is a mandatory approval provision under the local government code. So generally speaking, while it's nice to say, hey, folks, come forth and provide your opinion, if you're following the law says plat application A meets the requirements of the law, there is a removal of discretion. That approval becomes mandatory.
Well, you mentioned that the overlay, there are state codes that allow this, but to a novice like me, I would think an overlay would apply to a real big undeveloped area. The city says, okay, we got 200 acres over here, and here's what we want to do with that 200 acres. Isn't it very unusual to put an overlay on top of a city? It's already 90% developed.
No, not at all. No, a zoning overlay is a very, very common thing.
Where?
And
Can you
go
give
to-
us an
oh
example?
my gosh, dig through the code of ordinances of any city in Texas that makes any reasonable effort to zone, and you will find it is an extremely common practice for small, distinct, and nuanced areas. Again, the purpose for which this is being done is highly consistent with what you will see in the state of Texas. In other words, cities strive to be uniform, I think, to the greatest extent possible. However, when there is something unique and distinct about an area, then a city will say, you know, this is an issue that is common only to this one particular portion of this city. Therefore, to address that issue, we're going to create an overlay that has a separate rule or a set of select few rules that apply to this area. And I think the idea is that to say, okay, something has changed over in neighborhood A, so let's apply that same rule to neighborhood B, C, D, E, and F. You're then at that point for something like this, taking on the obligation to provide that 200-foot notice to that entire area, which then becomes exceptionally burdensome and expensive for the city. So again, this commission decides that they think this is a bad idea. Okay, that's fine. This commission decides, or the council does the same thing or doesn't. That's fine. But I can tell you, this is not an uncommon practice. It is not being done in an uncommon way. And Tomas, with all due respect, there's been a substantial amount of work that has gone into this in terms of thought, research, and analysis between the council and this commission. I don't think it's jumping the gun. It's just part of the process of having these conversations.
But is it?
So, but are a city within its rights to table this decision about the 1 acre rule until a land use plan has been put in place? Are we legally in the right as a city to do that?
This commission does need to act on this at some point, and perpetually delaying acting on this, I think reached the point where you need to say you've got to act on this up or down, because it's been coming before this commission for a period of months, and the law already envisions the process or how notice is provided. So I don't see that. I don't see that there's a practical reason for waiting until there's a comprehensive master plan in place, because the request for providing input for that is going to be the exact same as requesting input on this zoning overlay from the residents that are most affected.
Well, I think the objection is what Andy had over here, that all of Woodcreek should be treated under the same overlay.
Let me just interrupt
Sure.
with a point of fact, is that and I've seen this already in the media, and I've heard this, that we've been sitting on this thing for a long time at P&G. Now let me finish.
I don't think it's sitting.
We have met exactly twice
Right.
with this issue. The first time was in October,
Yes.
and it was a different proposal than what we see today. And when we raised questions to the person who was, I guess, who proposed it,
Right.
we couldn't get any answers.
Right.
It came up again in November. We raised some discussion about this and then realized we need more information before we can take action.
Correct.
So it's not like we've been going for months and months. It's really not correct.
And
what's the
that's
big rush?
not what I was trying to say, Joe. I don't think that is the case. I think there have been thoughtful questions asked before, but delaying action on this item until such time as there is a comprehensive master plan would not seem to me, in my opinion, to be consistent with the powers and the duties of this commission under state law or the city's code of ordinances. It would simply be saying at that point, we're refusing to act.
I don't think that's the case at all. We've got two people here, that another individual's not here, so he'd be new.
Right.
I mean, this is, strange to them. And I don't, what I'm saying is, it looks to me there's just this many really, that we're talking about. I just worry about where in the hell we're going. I mean, we got plotted land, plots. I pulled up a plot. 1980 plot over in that 5 acres there that's plotted for patio homes. And I believe you were asked this question by Kathy some time ago, and you kind of punted on it. Does the individual can go back here and snatch that original plot? Come on.
If someone wants to make an argument, they can. However, passage and approval of a plat will replace a prior plat. In other words, City of Woodcreek has a plat that has it chopped up into 5 lots, and then in comes developer and says, I've got this great idea for this wonderful community with a golf course. They get a new plat, and then the city incorporates, and then there's a subsequent plat that's approved within the city. And with every new valid plat that is approved, it replaces that prior and inconsistent plat. So that's not to say that some wise mind couldn't come forth and say, I believe I have a claim for vested rights, and here's my claim. But a remote and speculative claim of some established and vested rights cannot supplant what has been consistent long-term plat for the city. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, during the council meeting, I noticed a discussion when
Go ahead, sir. Excuse me.
yeah, go ahead.
As you pointed out, the state law, anytime a city decides to change the zone of one property or apply an overlay to multiple properties, people have to send out legal notice to every single property within 200 feet of the outside boundary of the zone. So he's absolutely right. Feedback you get about the process is the same feedback you're going to get from the zone change. Everybody in that neighborhood, when you get notice, you would be considering applying over. So that'll give them the trigger to say, all right, how do I feel about it? Do I have an issue with it? If I do have an issue, I'm going to go down there and tell them I don't want it on my property. If I don't have an issue, I'm probably not going to do anything at all. So the fact that state law is set up for them to be notified, for them to have the ability to come down here and express their opinion, tells you that it's freedom for you all to take up the topic of this problem.
Does the 200-foot perimeter, does that rule apply to something as large as this overlay that we're talking about? Because I'm thinking in the past, my experience has been, we only talk about the 200 feet when it comes to one house being rezoned or one swimming pool being built or something like that. So is it the same?
It's the same. It's 200 feet from the boundary of whatever property or properties are changing. So you can basically take a line, because the line is provided,
It's right here. Go 200 feet out.
you're going to offset 200 feet.
Yep.
And so if it's in ETJ, the notice only goes to properties.
It would also include the properties within the
So
protected.
you're talking 200 to 300.
Okay.
Well, but that's immaterial. Let me ask, I want to mention one thing. I noticed during the council meeting, there was a discussion, I don't know whether between Deborah, I think, I don't know if she brought the question up. It was during the conversation between Chris and you, and somebody, maybe it was her, said, well, what are the legal implications? And Mr. Pulley said, whoa, we don't want to talk about that in open session. Now that got my ears open. Is there something that y'all found from a legal issue? In fact, I think Deborah said, well, we already talked about it in a closed session. So is there something that it's not being hidden from us, but is there some concern from a legal issue that we ought to be aware of?
So I think it was Mayor Rasco that asked me.
This is pretty important.
I'm sorry.
I think it was Mayor Rasco that asked the question, and he got directly into if a lawsuit were filed, what would the something to that effect. And I think Brent's, he jumped in and he gave the same advice that I would have given, which is we're not gonna have those discussions about potential claims against the city in an open meeting.
What's the possibility? Small?
The possibility,
But I know us, people can sue anybody for anything. I understand that.
you've answered the question that I have said for many years. There's nothing in this world that stops stupid people and stupid lawyers from coming together and filing stupid lawsuits. Now, that being said, I am not saying that any lawsuit filed regarding the Brook Meadow overlay would be stupid. I'm sure that some bright legal mind could come up with something. But at this point in time, no one has presented a viable claim to the city that would make me say, boy, we really ought to consider this. But that is what the process is for. That is why the city follows the local government code and provides the notice and has these meetings and these hearings. So I can say, listen, if you've got something, come forth and let us hear it. But again, the process that this commission and the council have gone through for the past few months, I think it's been a valid and worthwhile exercise to discuss and flesh out these ideas. But I think now is the time under the city's code of ordinances did I?
So in the meantime, I want to shortcut this conversation.
Yeah.
So we
Okay,
don't go home before.
we've been hearing.
No.
I would like to make a motion. Okay. In order to avoid unnecessarily going to the extent of contacting everybody within 200 feet, this, that, and the other, I would like to make a motion that the city administrator contacts those 5 or 6 people who could possibly object to it and get the feedback from them back to our commission here, and then we move forward from there. That is my motion.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second the motion.
We can have discussion now. I saw a hand back there, Ms. Hines.
Would it be helpful to have clarification? Would it be helpful to address?
Please.
Yeah.
For discussion?
Well, the discussions with the council, but this body can ask for comments from the public if you want it.
Yeah, come on up. Don't be bashful.
If it is at all helpful, I have spoken to all of them. All those property owners typically have come here before in previous versions, and they have spoken in regards to the subdivision. But they've also had many communications with me. This was their idea. The larger properties, this was their idea of which. Doing this, and then once I won council, I picked it up and it is still their idea. They contact me all the time. How's this going? When are we going to get our letters? When are we going to get our notices? And we want to come and support this project. So
You're saying it's their idea, the people with the bigger property?
Exactly. So all the bigger properties are up at the front. There's the townhomes, and then there's a lot of bigger properties. And what happened was, when the subdivision was proposed, it triggered their attention because they got the first record. And they're, oh no, my neighborhood, or what am I could see this suddenly radically changing my neighborhood. So that's what triggered it. And they kind of came up with this idea. Hey, wait, is there a possibility to create something to keep us the way we are? And
But the only people that potentially have something to gain, if you will, are those landowners that have greater than 1 acre, and maybe they do want to sell their property to a developer.
And that's the interesting thing, is it's those with the larger properties are the most in support of this idea.
Okay, great.
That's great. You laid the groundwork. It should make Brenton's work so much easier. We just need to get this in writing, okay? The name, parcel, and say.
Next step in the process is.
Let me interrupt you and say that, I make an amendment to this, to the motion. And that is that we ask the city to poll as many residents as they can to get an official reading as to the popularity of this proposal. We really cannot depend on independent, particular citizens going door to door. That's not how we do these things in the city. We need an official measurement of sentiment for this. I'm not sure if that would be a survey of the entire population or some other method. I don't know. I'll leave it up to the city to decide. And what do we do with that amendment? Should I?
Well, are you talking
Should
about,
we vote on the?
You vote on the amendment before you vote on the final.
but are you saying send a letter to the affected property owners, but not to everybody living in Brook?
I'll say either or. I'll leave it to the city to decide what would be an official gauge for the popularity of this proposal. I would suggest for the whole city for one, but at least for the immediate people.
I'm not sure that's appropriate, because I mean, we should send it to the people affected by this, which are the ones who have larger lots. And if Jack is right, there's about 5 or 6 people. Those are the people I think we need to have some specific ideas of what their position is.
And if they want to give up their property rights,
Yeah.
that's their funeral, not mine.
I would suggest though that this could affect almost everybody in Woodcreek. Let's not count out the other people who may have an opinion about how this could change property values, for example, how it could affect their transportation, their streets, or everything else. I'd like to hear from everybody, because we're only, 1,400 people,
1750.
15 now?
1750. We had 21% growth.
Organization.
Can we hear
I'd
from,
like to see a more general sense of just how this is fitting with the city. That's my amendment.
can we hear from Mayor Rasko and
Go
Councilmember
ahead.
Hines?
Your amendment to the motion is exactly what we're trying to do. Is to get a letter out to every single person in Brook Meadow, everyone around Brook Meadow, to say that this is nothing that is on the table for consideration. And we want your people. So your survey of people is exactly what it's doing. That's trying to get to the point where we can say, okay, move ahead with the hearings, move ahead with the notifications, and get some feedback. If the majority of people in Brook Meadow say, oh, it's a stupid idea, and the surrounding people, it's a stupid idea, it falls. You know, but if those landowners are saying that, no, we want to protect the character of this area, just like the people on the golf course want to protect the golf course and keep it golf. They're fighting for that. The people of Brook Meadow have the same feeling about the character of their area, and that's what it's all about. And by the commission going forward and saying, yes, let's go to the next steps. That's not saying, hey, we don't totally agree with this concept and it may impact some people, but it's giving them a chance to have their say.
So this letter has been approved, you're gonna be doing?
Well,
this?
okay, let me go back to I'd like to skip down to item 13 too, with your permission. It's about talking about this hearing and everything else. Okay, so basically, it requires us to give 15 days notice to every property owner within that 200-foot radius, plus the ones that are, of course, in that area. Basically, we probably, with the scheduling and getting everything done, and getting usage of a building, so we can record it for a public hearing, we probably could get a hearing scheduled by the end of March. But in that time period, we could go ahead and do a town hall meeting. And that way we could go ahead and give notice to, get the ball rolling for the notice for the public hearing. City council would be meeting that next, the second Wednesday of the month. I got to look because we have some changes in it, but at least the ball's rolling. But then we could still have basically almost a full month of being able to have a town hall or 2 town halls even, and use the VFW or somewhere where we can actually have input from all the citizens of Woodcreek, and especially the ones from this proposed overlay.
Does this meet your concerns?
That's maybe,
I can't help this one, but I just want to speak real quickly to the lot size concerns, and so I don't want to get into any kind of place where I'm swaying your vote. But I do want to clarify that this doesn't actually just impact my lots. It impacts most of them, because right now, currently, our subdivision code allows for lots that are smaller than 12,000 square feet. There is a loophole that's there, and actually, we've already submitted to y'all, we want your input, and hopefully we'll come back on another agenda. But right now, on homes can have lots that are about 8,000 square feet. That's per our zoning, the measurements given for us to lot, the size of the house and the setbacks required to actually allow lots much smaller than 12,000 square feet. So this doesn't just impact those 5 large acre lots. This impacts all lots that could be subdivided down to nearly 8,500 square feet. So I just wanted to correct that error in logic, because that is not mathematically accurate. There are not just 5 lots impacted. And then when you come to the idea of the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood and the larger lot sizes, the more of that denser development goes in, it's actually impacting all. So not necessarily their right to be able to subdivide, right? How small they can subdivide, but it impacts the traffic on their road. And that's one of the things that we're supposed to take into consideration when we approve subdivisions, right? We want to make those slight corrections in your consideration. That is not just 5 large lots that won't be able to subdivide anymore real low. It's actually all of those lots could subdivide down to 8,500 square feet per our code.
Brenton, is that correct? Because you said 12,000 square foot was the smallest you could do.
Well, right now, under any subdivision, it does say, otherwise, less than 12,000 square feet. And Bud, you can jump in on this. So, but in our zoning code.
5544, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but within our zoning code itself, it doesn't actually specify the size of the lot. It specifies the size of the house plus the setbacks. So it does restrict the size of the lot by looking at the size of the house.
We're talking 2 different issues, though. The issue we got here is the overlay on the one house per acre. This other thing that Deborah's talking about is another action item. So we mingling two action items. We like to keep them separated because this one that goes out for 200,
Well, the other one will.
the other one is totally different. It's under the overlay. I know, but Deborah, under the overlay, it's about 5 plus what? I thought we talked about 12 or 13 smaller ones, but I'm talking about the 5 ones are like 1.8, 2.8, 2.1. That's what I was talking about. That's the biggies. That's what y'all are trying to prevent people coming in there and subdividing that. I mean, that's the bottom line. You do not want those acreages to be broken into quarter acres. That's really what you're after, And so there are only that many big areas that you can do that with. So
I need to make sure I understand still, because maybe I am confused. Was it Sam? Was that your name? Yeah. Steve. You have 3 lots. It's 3/4 of an acre. It's less than 1 acre. Presumably this overlay wouldn't impact you because you don't even have an acre. Right now, you could build 3 houses on your 3 lots, right? If we passed this ordinance that said the minimum lot size from this point going forward can't be subdivided to less than 1 acre, could he still build 3?
His lots are actually 3 distinct lots at this time. So he has 3.
Gotcha. So anything that's already.
Right. He already has 3 lots.
Okay. So all we're talking about then is anything that's bigger than an acre or becomes bigger than an acre, dividing it back down again.
that's what I'm trying.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, please do.
People talk about sometimes that's the problem. Everything I heard about so far is do that, do that.
I don't mean to,
It seems like, how much money can we give? What do you work?
yeah, that's not my intention. I'm sorry if I conveyed that. What I'm just trying to do is simplify, because I need to make sure I understand exactly what we're talking about. And in my mind, that's the easiest way to put it together. So I'm just trying to understand, are we talking about me, about my home? I mean, I have 2 lots. Are we talking about my 2 lots? Are we talking about your 3 lots? Or are we just talking about people who have property in excess of 1 acre right now? Oh, no, I totally, yeah, no, I get it. I hear your message. People moved into Brook Meadow because there's open space, not because there's a bunch of houses there, because there's trees and because there's, big lot sizes. I totally get that. I'm totally supportive of that. And if that's what Brook Meadow wants, man, I'm your advocate. But I'm just, all I'm trying to do right now is to make sure I understand what people are saying.
I think the only way we're going to get to the point of understanding what people are saying, and Tomas, I know that you're trying to help facilitate that, but the only way we legitimately get there is to follow the process set forth under the local government code, to set that public hearing, to issue those notices, and to bring people in, and then let this commission exercise its authority under the code of ordinances to advise. And that's how we get there.
But Ward, we're sending out several hundreds of notices when we're only talking about a handful. That's what's disturbing me. I mean, that's costly for the city. Is it going to be confusing to somebody that lives in a small place on Shady Grove? He's getting this thing that says, Jesus, how does this affect me? I mean,
But Joe, that gets to his point of someone who is on a small lot across the street, even though they don't have a 1.5 acre lot, they certainly have an opinion on
Sure.
what should be done with that 1.5 acre lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
But I mean, that's the purpose of the meeting. I mean, that is the purpose of the public hearing, is for thoughtful presentation of the idea, which is to clearly convey, listen, if you own more than an acre, this may affect you. If you own less than an acre, you can't subdivide it anymore, and you can keep what you have and you can't change it, but come forth and speak. I mean, this is the process the law envisions.
right, because even if all the people that had more than an acre said, no, we absolutely don't want this because we want to be able to subdivide our lot.
Right.
But the other 180 people that have less than say, no, we absolutely want this because we don't want any more development to come
Maybe
in
so.
here. Right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna make a suggestion. We've been going a long time.
but it's good discussion.
And what I'd like to do would be to call the question. We've got a motion on the floor, seconded for one. I'm withdrawing my amendment to the motion. And then unless we've got pressing business to kind of hold the rest of these items for the next meeting, we've got a number of things. If there's anything pressing, please let me know. We can address it right away, but we're not in any necessary order now.
Well,
Make sense?
yeah, but on this issue, we've been kicking this thing around. I got to agree with you. The only thing that bothers me is should we get the whole city involved? They've got comments too. I mean, do we bring the entire city into this? I mean, does that make sense to bring the entire city into an event like this?
Okay, Mr.
Huh?
Mayor, well, you may go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Breaking my own rules, not using the microphone. It's public hearings. So anybody from anywhere in Woodcreek can come in and speak to the concept. So if you want to, or you want to, or Brenton
Well,
want
and
to, they
basically-
could speak.
But is
at
a
the
public
for it.
hearing pre or after these notices go out?
Well,
The
okay,
the hearing the public hearing follows issuance of those notices.
That's
So-
what I'm saying.
So I don't think that we can get hung up on the idea of whether or not John and Jane Smith might be confused by this, or whether or not proper notice might be received, because under the law, there's a standard for notice. Whether it's giving someone notice of a probate filing, or notice for the filing of a lawsuit, or notice for a hearing on a zoning change. What we have to be focused on is following the process set forth under the law for giving people notice of a public hearing, which in this case is giving notice to people within that 200-foot area so that they know. And again, like the mayor said, one of these things is going to go out. And maybe people will show up, maybe they won't. But all we can do is what the law requires us to do. And inevitably, there will be any number of people, although I haven't seen them yet, that will say, you know, I didn't see that. I didn't hear about that. But our job is to follow the law. If people show up, they do.
Would we be, after we collect more information, which certainly seems to be the case, and I think it's great, more data, are we going to be able to raise this issue again as a P&Z to make a final decision on our part? We don't have, this is not our last visit on it, right?
Following
Okay.
the public hearing is when you shall advise and make your recommendation. At that point, this commission will then say, thumbs up, proceed with the overlay, we like it, or thumbs down, we don't like it, we don't approve of it. Whatever the recommendation of this commission is, it will then go to the council, and the council will get to act either consistent or inconsistent with the recommendation of this commission, whatever they determine in their infinite wisdom.
And that's subsequent to getting these notices sent out.
That's correct.
And then we review, you know, and we kick it.
Okay, we still have a motion on the table,
Well,
sir?
You're still debating it, I think. How did someone come up with the minimum 1 acre? Why not 0.75? Why not 1 1/4? Because if we approve here to move forward with this, sending out in mails, whatever, we have implied that we think as a commissioner, group here, that 1 acre is the right number. Have we ever discussed if that's the right number or not? And who came up with the 1 acre number? Did Brentford come up with that over coffee, or did the mayor suggest 1 acre? I'm just curious, where did 1 acre come up?
It was discussed whether it should be an acre, 2 acres, half an acre. And we just felt like 1 acre was more consistent with sort of a compromise between the half and the 2 or something, so that 1 acre was a natural sort of dividing point. People think about, 1 acre, like 5 acre rancheros or things. It's like, you don't really think too much about 0.75. Most of the homes in Brook Meadow are probably on half acre already. So those folks aren't impacted.
Right.
So it was not exactly arbitrary, but it just seemed like a natural number to deal with.
So city council collectively came up with the 1 acre number. City council.
Yeah, basically, yes. We put the 1 acre forward, and it was passed, say, okay, let's send 1 acre down to P&Z.
We have a motion on the table.
No, I think I'm going to withdraw it.
Okay, we can do that. And I would like to see a motion raised that we allow the process to continue.
Okay.
I'll make that
Can
motion.
you do that?
Well, basically, so we've jumped down to item number 13, right?
Number 8?
Yeah.
Okay, we addressed that. Okay. We'll jump instead to item number 8, discussion of possible
No, 13.
recommendations on the potential legal issues
We don't.
with the proposed Brook Meadow overlay district requiring 1 acre lots for new subdivisions of properties.
Or if you want to go ahead and proceed with the process, you would go down to item number 13.
We jump to 13. What do you think about that? Let's go 13.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we move forward with action item 13, which means get the ball going. Is that right?
Okay, so basically what
Huh?
this commission is asking is to begin the public hearing process and make sure that we post according to law.
Does that include sending out the notices?
The notice, and basically it would require sending out the notices within 200 foot. We have to publish within the paper of record, which is the Wimberley View, and then it'll be posted on our website. And also go out as an email blast.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Call the count, please.
Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Davenport,
Yes.
Chairperson Scarborough,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowe.
Yes.
Okay.
3 hours later. Now, you owe me a case of scotch, by the way. Thank you.
Well, before
Oh,
you get
no.
into your bargain over here,
Oh, no.
I will call the meeting to a conclusion.
Can we set a meeting?
Well, we have to get that set.
What we will do
I
is
take
we
back
will,
my comment.
meet with the camp. We will poll the commissioners to find out, but you will have plenty of notice before it.
Do you expect it in 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Well, on the actual public hearing, probably by the time we get notices, and the thing is, we have to publish 15 days before the hearing. Well, to get it in the Wimberley View, then you have to be at least
No, no,
7 days.
I meant the PNC, next PNC.
Well, it could be the time of the public hearing,
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
but we will poll everybody to find out if we can get another meeting in there.
Okay, all right.
Okay, great. We're adjourned.
Yeah, we need, well, no, everything was placed on the table.
3:52, we are adjourned.
We're gonna do that next time. We're worn out. We're worn out.
Are we adjourned?
Chairperson, are we adjourned?
We're adjourned.
Are we adjourned or not?
I called 3:52.
All right. No, you don't. No. I'll talk to you about it here in a second. I gotta get this.